Good afternoon. The March 11th, 2025 Board Work Session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, I'm into your space there. I couldn't see the flag.
Dr. Rendell, can you address the board with the items on the agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have three different topics we're going to cover today in the work session. The first will be a review of the proposed changes to the Code of Student Conduct. We'll also have then a presentation on two more segments of the strategic plan, and then we'll follow that up with some presentations of some recommended policy revisions and policy changes. So the first presentation is going to be on the recommended changes or updates to the Code of Student Conduct, and we can turn that over to Mrs. Dampier, and she can start with her team.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Rendell. Today, I bring forward the proposed changes and recommendation of changes to the 25-26 Student Code of Conduct by the District Discipline Work Group, as well as other stakeholders. I have Mr. Armstrong, Director of Student Services, as well as Assistant Director, Mrs. Kelly. She'll be scribing for us in real time of any changes today throughout the presentation. The District Discipline Work Group consisted of representations from board members. We ask that you each give us two nominees: Brevard Federation of Teachers, Brevard Association of School Administrators, Local Union 1010, Student Advisory Council, school resource officers, and community members. Throughout the year, we met 4 different times from October through February to solicit feedback, and we really worked hard, and we stayed to the agenda throughout each one of the sessions. There was a purpose. The purpose there was to collaborate as well as to get feedback of proposed changes. So we took each section of the Code of Student Conduct and we had groups give feedback. Then we did a gallery walk and they went around and they gave feedback on the gallery walk. And then the process was that we gathered that feedback, the district team came back and assembled that feedback and then sent it back out to the group prior to the next meeting. So then we reviewed that proposed feedback and then we started the next cycle. Until the last session, which was in February, we gathered all of that feedback and shared, which we'll present to you today, that entire cycle of feedback. It's important that we really listen to our stakeholders, which includes our students. They had a voice. We actually went to the Superintendent Student Advisory Council session back in November and really got feedback from a student voice. And that was important to us as well. So we really wanted to make sure we had feedback from all stakeholders. As you can see on the timeline, we're at the February through March where we've already gathered feedback and we reviewed it, and we're bringing it forward in March to the school board for recommendations, and then we'll move forward with requesting the public hearing in April. The protocol, I sort of explained it ahead of time, but the work group really had a big, huge job to really provide feedback. It was a cycle of feedback where we had good conversation throughout. There were some things you'll see in your packet where they recommended that we did not move forward with. Either it was redundant, we already had that in place, or it was against statute or policy, or it was not something we were moving forward with. And the team, our district team, really looked at the feedback and we brought it back to the team just so they could see that cycle, that we're just not doing, you're just not here for nothing. We wanted you to have a product, and we ended up with a product that we feel very proud to bring forward to the board for recommendation. And sitting before you today, you have that final draft of recommendations. At this time, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Mr. Armstrong, and he is going to go over step by step of all the recommendations and the impact that it would have if we made those recommendations. And then we'll garner feedback from board members of any other additional changes that you would like us to make to the student code of conduct before we bring it in April. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Armstrong.
Hi, good afternoon, board members and Dr. Rendell. I just want to go through quickly and just for those that might not remember last year or who were not part of us last year, of what it looks like when we're looking at this spreadsheet that we're going to show you with the recommendations. So when you're looking up here, the item number all the way to the top left there is just a numerical number that we may refer to when talking about item 1 or item 2. It's just an easy way we can refer back to each of the recommendations. The second part there, it says session, so you'll see that it'll correspond with either sessions 1, 2, 3, or 4. Some of them, it was kind of a bridge between multiple sessions, so you'll see just that as a reference point for you when you're looking at the document. The other part there next to it there is the revision. Some are total revisions of an existing statement or definition or behavior, while others might be a completely new version of that. The code of conduct topic there is just simply telling you what the topic is that we're discussing at the time. So the SB just stands for student behaviors. CS stands for corrective strategy, which is sometimes known as a consequence. We might refer to levels or numbers there, and they're going to be numerically sometimes referenced on a page number in a code of student conduct, as well as seeing acronyms such as WCD, standing for wireless communication device, or whatnot, or like I said, or the willful disobedience chart of being a WD chart. Another part here is the actual recommendation itself. The recommendation is kind of a summarization of what we did with our stakeholders in the district discipline work group, as well as meeting with district staff here to make sure that it's not going against existing statute or policy, or that it's feasible for our schools to effectively implement into their schools. The proposed change is just that. It is the proposed change of language change that we are proposing to the school board to approve. So anything that is underlined, italicized, and bolded is new and additional language. So if you do not see it underlined, italicized, and bolded, that means it's existing language. A strike through just represents that language that is recommending to be removed from an existing definition or statement. And finally, on the final column all the way to the right, mentions the word feedback there. Numerous times I might refer to specific artifacts. We do have artifacts 1 through 6, so sometimes we're talking about a certain chart and it's going to reference to a certain artifact number in there. And we'll talk about that as we go on throughout the presentation. Okay, so if we can go ahead and start, I'd like to go ahead and start with our first item 1 here. So looking at this one, this is item 1, recommended in session 1. It is a revision, and the code of conduct topic was bus transportation violations, both the major version we have and the minor version. They're both existing incident codes. There was a recommendation to make there to be more of a clear definition between the two. There is already existing examples in both. However, the discipline work group wanted a little bit more clarity to them. So the proposed language there is just to add the words, these include but not limited to eating, drinking on bus, board provided transportation. This is something that is existing already on most buses, but they wanted it definitively added into the minor version. So that is a recommendation that we have cleared and looked, and that looks to be one that they are wanting to move forward with. any questions on that one? Okay. So the second one is a little bit more in depth, so I want to kind of talk this one out. So currently what it's showing there is that, oh, there we go, is for physical aggression, we have three existing codes here we're looking to collapse into potentially just two. So we have a student behavior number 57, physical aggression, one-sided. Sorry. I think we're jumping on it. Physical aggression, one-sided for third grade through 12th grade. We have a physical aggression through pre-K through second, and then we have a fighting non-cessor. The fighting non-cessor is just a local coded version of a cessor fight. So it was the recommendation of the discipline work group and of the district staff here to collapse some of those into just two new codes. They would also be called physical aggression. However, the delineating factor in those is that instead of having multiple ways to say that students have put hands on one another in an inappropriate manner, to collapse it into the language as such. Individuals participating in a mutual or non-mutual and/or aggressive physical contact with aggressive intent towards another student or school board employee resulting in no injury. The delineation of resulting in no injury, because if it does result in injury, we have existing cessor codes of fighting cessor, simple battery, and/or aggravated battery that would cover those. So the creation of those would actually lead to less confusion because we wouldn't have so many ways to say there's inappropriate contact between students. We would have just a more simplified way to run that data. Any
I'm
questions?
gonna wait till the end.
Okay.
I'm like, I got a couple.
So the third item is also an existing student behavior 31, false accusation against staff member. There was asked to be a revision to that. The recommendation was to add a broader term to staff member, adding terminology such as volunteers, or even considering the terminology adults in authority. After conferring with the discipline work group and district staff, we are making a recommendation to add the terminology of school board approved personnel. For the simple fact, if you are approved by school board personnel, it means you would be a volunteer, you would be some sort of adult authority on campus. So that way we're not continuing to list more and more versions of an adult and authority as we go out throughout the year. So that would just be a simple update to current language. Number 4 is, again, it's an existing term we have, student behavior 62, profane, obscene, and vulgar language major. The recommendation was to add any profanity directed at a BPS employee. Again, after consultation, we decided that using the terminology of any profanity directed towards any BPS board-approved personnel would encapsulate any sort of adult of authority on campus. So again, that would just be a simple update in the language of the existing definition. Number 5 is an existing corrective strategy, CS 43, student behavior contract. The recommendation was to remove the word contract and to replace it with the terminology agreement, to utilize that it's staff in cooperation with the student and guardians and not just a contractual agreement. So the language would read as such: student behavior agreement correcting inappropriate or disruptive student behavior through a formal agreement between student and staff. So the only change would be adding those bolded, italicized, and underlined terminology to an existing corrective strategy. Number 6 is an existing student behavior we have, student behavior 78, threat to school, staff, and student, number 118. The recommendation was to eliminate the local code of threat to school, staff, and student and to classify all threats under the state definition, which is the threat and intimidation TRE. The thought behind that is then it would lead to less perhaps underreporting of threats. By having a local code, sometimes we could walk that line of that. So by eliminating that and just having things coded by what the state definition is, we would be better in line with the Office of Safe Schools. So that would be an elimination of that student behavior. Number 7 is number 68. It is sexual assault. This is an existing assessor code of the 26 that we do have from the state of Florida. The recommendation was to move it from an existing place as a level 4 to a level 5, level 5 being the highest in our discipline code of conduct. There'd be no change to the definition. It would simply just be a level change from a level 4 to a level 5, making it one of the more severe incidents we have on our code of student conduct. Number 8 is student behavior 76, is testing security violation, numbers 1, 2, 4. This was a new code that we introduced last year. There was some discussion of making a major and a minor version to delineate between the invalidation of one test against multiple tests. And we determined after looking at this that it would make more sense to just move it from a level 2 to level 3. It still gives schools the flexibility to utilize existing corrective strategies without having to create another student behavior onto there. So it still demonstrates what they're asking for, which is to make sure that if it does violate more than one student, that there is additional consequences or corrective strategies that can be added. Number 9 is an artifact, so you could refer to artifact 1. This are the guidelines to levels 1 and 4 behavior incidents. There was a recommendation for a creation of guidelines for specified student behaviors to ranging from levels 1 all the way up to level 4 to add some more consistency and continuity of the discipline that is being enacted at our schools. So within there still is some flexibility for principals to utilize their autonomy and authority. However, it really provides a straightforward guide for them to follow when it comes to first offense, second offense, and third offense, and therefore so on from there. This was something that we went through on session 3 and then came back and spoke again to it on session 4. Number 10 also came up in session 3 as well, with the additional use of artificial intelligence in our schools. We decided to make a draft guideline of responsible and ethical use of artificial intelligence. This would be artifact number 2 in your packets there. And this is really just to kind of give schools and parents the idea of what is acceptable use of that and what would not be acceptable use of artificial intelligence in our school system. We already have codes in our student code of conduct that can address it discipline-wise, but this is a nice guideline for them to follow, and this would be implemented into our code of student conduct. In addition to this, there would be an update in policy 5136 for our wireless communication device. Number 11 came actually from our district staff here. Currently, right now, we have an FBA and a BIP as functional behavior assessment or a behavior intervention plan. These are existing behavior plans that right now we have in levels 1 through 3. As I mentioned before, we are introducing a student behavior agreement, and a little bit later I'll talk about another corrective action of a behavior plan we're implementing, so that way we're not automatically jumping to a higher tiered approach for discipline. Not all students need to have a BIP or an FBA. So it's more of a tiered approach. That way, when they are, if if they are moving up the ladder, we already have some things in place in levels 1 and 2, but we're just moving that FBA and BIP up to a level 3 in the existing code of conduct. Number 12 also came from district, removing any wordage around restorative practices. There was some of this language still existing in our code of student conduct. And again, going by DOE guidance, this language is now being recommended to be removed from our student code of conduct, which would result in the restorative practices corrective action being removed as a available corrective action for our schools. Number 13 also is a district recommendation, and this is just really just a formality. We have an existing corrective action of plan meeting, and it mentions the terminology IPST. That is just an outdated terminology of individual problem-solving team. So now just dropping that I and just having it as problem-solving team was just a recommendation. So no other impact other than just updating that definition. Number 14, I referenced just a few minutes ago of behavior plan. This is a new corrective action we would add that we would like to put into our level 1. And this is more of a collaborative approach of behavioral strategies and interventions that we would like to incorporate for schools to utilize instead of jumping right to something like a functional behavior assessment or a behavior intervention plan. Utilizing something like the behavior plan is a more of a tiered approach at a level 1, and then if need be, we can work up through the higher levels of an FBA or a BIP. So this would just simply be an update to the Code of Student Conduct. Number 15 came up in session 3. This is the topic of smart glasses, or sometimes referred to as meta glasses. The recommendation was to make sure that we code that appropriately in our existing code of conduct. So instead of creating a brand new code just around that, we encapsulated it now to be utilized. If a student is using their smart glasses on campus, it would be coded as an electronic telecommunication device misuse major, which is an existing level 3 on our code of conduct. And you would also see that in artifact number 1 and 3, it is referenced in there to tell schools when and if smart glasses are utilized on campus, how they should be coded in there. Two things that are not on here are that with the changes that we're proposing, there would be some changes in the existing policy for WCD, which is the 5136, and also the attendance policy of 5200. The WCD policy would just have the language added of smart glasses when we're outlining what WCD would be. And 5200, there is some updated language change when it comes to some of our existing attendance procedures. This was made in conjunction with stakeholders, where we were working with staff and stakeholders to get their opinion and feedback. So looking at artifact number 6 under section G, it talks about personal illness of a student with a parent note. Medical evidence may be required for the principal or designee for absences exceeding 5 consecutive days. Right now, for it to be an excused absence, they have to bring a doctor's note in. This would allow a parent to excuse an illness, but anything after that 5 days, they would have to seek a medical note from a doctor or a licensed physician. And that's just the change in the policy there. In there, also in section G, it kind of lists out some reasonable excuses for time missed at school. 2 things have been added in there. Absences not included in the excuse of absences above shall be unexcused, simply saying that if it's not listed above, then those would count as unexcused absences for our students. And the next one here is more giving a guideline of when absences must be reported to schools. So the proposed language is absences must be reported to the school by the parent or guardian within 2 days or 48 hours in order to be considered as an excused absence. Right now, that's kind of a varied guideline right now. There's some inconsistency in that, so we're trying to provide some consistency of when and how we're rolling out our excuses for our students. If you look on our Code of Student Conduct on page 39, there is a one-pager that we introduced in there. It was existing from last year, but there's been some updated language, some best practice information, including chronic absenteeism, really trying to outline to parents and students what chronic absenteeism is, what regular attendance should be. It should be more than 95% of attendance in the academic school year, and et cetera. So we tried to be really straightforward with parents so they have information up front, so that way they're more well-informed. And finally, number 16 for the district would be the potential closure of the alternative learning centers. Again, the recommendation of closing the brick and mortar ALCs and moving to school-based stipulation conduct agreements and/or an online learning platform. So within that, there would be some movement of our existing level 4 and level 5 incidents, depending on board recommendation and direction they would like. Right now, we have tentatively put some recommendations in there, but we would seek the board to provide any clarity whether or not they want anything else moved from an existing level 4 to a level 5 or vice versa. Any questions so far?
Board?
All right, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conversation, so I'll jump in if nobody else wants to jump in. A couple things. All right, thank you. This is no small undertaking to go through this, and this is a document, Mr. Armstrong, we spoke about this. You're going to continually touch this as
Yes.
times change and
Yeah, exactly.
children learn different things, and that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
part of the nature of this. So a couple thoughts I wanted to just kind of go through. Having the 5 different levels is good. I think level 5s should be reserved, my personal opinion, and I don't know where the board lands in this, those should be reserved for non-negotiable, those are expellable offenses. I think one of the challenges that we see is when there's a menu of, if you commit these offenses, and there's a whole plethora of them, you can implement any of these consequences, and again, an entire plethora, then we start getting the inconsistency when it comes to how we're actually enforcing our discipline, right? So if they cuss a teacher out, and you can either call a parent, write a referral, or you can suspend them for 5 days, when those options are both available, then we start seeing like, oh, this could get a little gray. Like, why are we doing this for one student, not for the other? So I think one of the ways to really clear it up is that if level 5 happens, level 5 means that is an expellable offense. And then there's no question there of like, what are your choices? What is your options for punishment? That's, board, I don't know what your appetite is for that, but I think maybe just to clear it up a little bit, that might help. So students and families and teachers know, like, what is the, hey, this is the line. We are towing the line here with this. One of the other things that I, want to reiterate, so the stay away contract, stay away agreement that we're changing it to, one of the things I would ask for that is that parent contact must be made before the student is asked to sign that form. So the concern that I have, and I've heard this from multiple parents, is that their child was brought into the dean's office because of some squabble with the student, and they were asked to, they were told that they must sign this agreement, and if they don't adhere to it, then they can be expelled. And so, not parent contact. I want them to actually speak to the parent. Has to acknowledge, yes, I am okay with this. My student can sign this. So, I just think we get into the weeds of potential issues there. And so, from a parent's perspective, I'm just going to ask, can we please make sure the parent knows that this is happening and that their student is signing this prior to, in case they have any concerns or they want to share additional information. Sometimes incidents happen outside of school that spill into school, and there might be some pertinent facts there that we need to know as well. So that's one ask there. When we looked at this on the first page, number 2, the physical aggression, this one makes me sigh. I will tell you that. When we look at what we're changing here, so physical aggression, physical contact, or aggressive intent towards another student or school board employee resulting in no injury. Kids will be kids. There will be physical aggression, no doubt about that. I expect to see that a little more between kids when it's talking about physical aggression towards a school board employee or approved person. I have zero tolerance for that. So a child should not be physically aggressive towards one of the leaders in the school, whether that be a mentor, a teacher, an IA, whoever it is. So my feelings on this are that one should probably have a heftier penalty than kids being kids and kind of just, fighting amongst themselves or being silly or pushing each other. It's a different category when you're looking at a child trying to come after a staff member. That's my personal thought. So I'm just kind of kicking out ideas here. I don't know how we want to handle this on going through there, but I mean, the undertaking that you guys have is not an easy one. Ideally, where I would love to see this happen is that it's very clear, like, hey, if this offense gets committed, then this is the penalty. I know that that's a really hard thing to do because there are so many offenses that just pop up, some things you never even think about. And so trying to define that clearly is not an easy task. So I understand why we have the menu. But my ask would be, board, would you support looking at fives being non-negotiables? These are expellable offenses so that everyone has a clear understanding and there's no wish-wash over, are they expelled, are they not expelled? What are we doing?
Are you done? Or-
Yeah, I'm done for right now. I might come back and have more things as people talk, but for right now, we'll let that one, yeah.
We'll make sure to answer that.
Okay.
Sure. What?
No, I don't have more right now, so thank you, Ms. Kimball.
So you have a question on the floor. Do we want to move those and clearly define the level 5 offenses? You need
Yeah, do you
information
want to
on
hear
that
from
now?
us before?
Or do you want to
So,
do
yeah,
that?
my,
Because I have a bunch of questions.
my ask was, can fives be, can we make category 5, these are the list of expellable offenses and they're non-negotiable, so it's not the potential of, it could be suspension and school suspension, behavior plan, whatever it is. These are non-negotiable expellable offenses. And then, keep the menu option open for 1 through 4 with the different variations of offenses and
Any of
potential.
these offenses occur, it is
Okay.
non-negotiable.
If they're level 5s, right. So my ask would be, let's work on level 5s and making sure that level 5s truly are expellable offenses. In my mind, they are. They are. Some of them are by state statute expellable offenses for 365. Some of them are not. So, okay.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind to me is aggravated battery. It's not specifically delineated to be like expellable. It can be, but you're right, technically right now that can result in an ALC placement. So if we were to keep that as a level 5 under your direction, then we would make that an expellable offense right off the bat.
Right.
Aggravated battery is when you use a weapon and hit somebody, right?
Aggravated battery is defined by the state, really done to more serious bodily injury. So that's where there's a delineation between a simple battery, it's less serious bodily injury. There's some type of medical care provided. More serious comes down to broken bones, like you were pregnant and you were attacked, like et cetera. It usually means like,
I think it's also a weapon. Yeah. Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go, oop, am I on? Hello, hello. Let me go backwards just a little bit. On the attendance policy, thank you for making that update. I think this is the one thing that's been left when it comes to attendance that parents are concerned about. Why should I go pay a copay so that my child is excused absence? Because when my kids have a cold, and I'm one of those parents, no, you're staying home until I know it's strep throat or whatever. We've eliminated everything. So that's something people have been asking for. I appreciate that. But I also appreciate this 48 hours because you can't get to the end of the semester and go, oh, 2 months ago that was excused. So I think that is absolutely reasonable. Thank you for doing that. On the list, I had a question on the threat to school staff or student, which is number 6. So what if it doesn't reach assessor level? And the reason why I ask that is, obviously we've recently gone through some of this stuff with those of us who sat on an expulsion hearing, but also, if you have, let me get to my definitions. The definition of TRE, which is assessor definition, we don't get to make that one up, is the reasonable So what is the school going to code it if it's, for example, a young student or whatever, it's not reasonable, but they're still making a threat? Is there, are they still, is there some place where that's going to go?
Depending on what's said, existing code says the profane, vulgar, major might be able to take that. It's a level 3, which would be existing what a threat to school, staff, student would be. So that
Okay.
would be maybe an appropriate thing.
Okay.
Or we could look at, we have electronic misuse major. It talks about the use of threatening language, dehumanizing language. Maybe if it's done through electronic purposes, there might
Right.
be a way to utilize existing
Right.
codes.
Right, and that is the problem with some zero tolerance type things is if you have a little, you have a kid who just, I'm going to punch you in the face. Well, that's a threat. If it's a first grader, is there that reason? I don't think it would qualify as assessor, right? Because it's not going to qualify. And if they actually follow through with it, then it's going to be one of these.
Yeah, if they follow through, it'll meet the criteria.
Right, that's a whole different ballgame. Okay, I just wanted to ask that question, just like, what do we do with those that are threats, but they don't rise to the level of assessor definition, since that is defined for us? On the artifact number 1, on the fourth page, sorry, the final page of that have the second offense guidelines for drug use, possession, DRU, and fighting FIT. If we're going to change whatever we land on this when it comes to the ALCs, I think we might need to adjust some language under for DRU. It says 4 to 10 days out of school suspension pending investigation, right? Which is always the first step, right?
Yes.
Before we're about to head to alternative setting or expulsion. Placement in alternative setting for a specified period of time. That could still be our online thing. So I guess that one could be okay, right? If setting, I don't know, I think setting like a physical placement, but I guess setting could still be you're at home learning.
Yeah, and I think the language was specific for that, not to then, sometimes we say the words alternative placement or alternative
Right.
setting, our minds go to ALC.
Right.
But like the P code that's utilized for something like an alternative placement, it is truly if you are not in your regular school setting. So if you're in a program like that, we could probably keep that language of alternative setting and be okay, but we can change.
Right. No, I just, as long as it's clear with the people who are putting, and then the other thing I had was on the fighting one, that first bullet, again, the second offense bullet, parent conference notify an extra referral may result in 10-day pending expulsion or alternative setting, because that's, I'm assuming that we're going to leave fighting as they're going to have that, because it's level 4, it's going to either be the opportunity to have the diversion program or the online learning option. So,
Yeah, correct.
and the 10-day pending, that's going to happen either way, correct?
Right, that's just the process we utilize when a
Right.
student is under investigation.
While you're doing the
for
investigation, you're not on
potential-
campus while we're figuring this out,
Correct,
and we're
yes.
having all the meetings we have to have.
Yes.
Okay. 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 So when it comes to level 4, level 5, and the question that Ms. Wright asked, well, actually, let me back up because I want to address this because that's going to be a longer conversation. Ms. Wright, you said something about physical aggression, difference between a student and a staff member. I think that menu that we have in those levels allows the principal, and we have in our policy a section that talks about if you lay hands on a staff member, however heavy or light, it's a 1 year. That's still in there, right?
Yeah, it's policy 5500.
Right. So I think that is going to be the difference between student versus staff.
So then should we fix it on here though, so that it's not different? Because if it's open on here and somebody just pulls this out, they might
Well, except
not
for physical
recognize.
aggression can be, like, it doesn't even have to go to the level of touching, correct?
I believe let me see how
I think
we've
the word physical
verbalized it here.
means, it does.
Let me see how it was worded
Well, I
here.
mean, because you could be like,
It does mention the words aggressive physical contact.
okay,
Yeah.
contact, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this level 5 thing, I absolutely agree with you, but I think we're actually already there, because if you look at the level 5s, so the corrective strategies are, the first one is out-of-school suspension pending, up to 10 days pending investigation. That is always, as I mentioned, the first step.
Right.
So that's got to be on there because that's the process. The second one is that recommendation for online learning. So you're still learning. It's this conversation
Right.
we had. And then there's expulsion. And I think that referral to mental health services, that is not in lieu of all those things, correct? That is if it was a specific part of that process.
It would be in conjunction, yeah.
In conjunction with threat assessment, that's going to go in addition to. So I think we're already there.
Yeah,
So-
no, what I was meaning was more to the left side. What are the level 5s? That's what I was referring to. Sorry, I didn't clearly.
So I agree, and I actually think that I think that staff moved too many over to 5, and hear me out. First of all, let me just be very clear. Level 4 is also very serious and has very serious consequences. But I think we moved, in my mind, 2 over that should have remained at level 4. And because anything we put in level 5, we just took the option away. We only need to put things over in level 5, and I think this is where we were getting, where we want to remove the possibility from the principal to have that option of leaving them at school. If we think, I don't even want the principal to have that option, put it in a 5. There's 2, I think, that need to stay in 4, and the one is false accusation against a staff member, and I'm just reading the definition. I know we're all thinking of certain scenarios, but I want us to think of all the scenarios that would have fit that, and we are removing the option if the principal is, considering the age of the child, because I'm looking at elementary also. The principal's looking at the age of the child, past behavior, the seriousness of the certain circumstance. They don't get to take any of that. If we put it on a 5, they don't get to take any of that into consideration. It's automatically one of these out-of-school options. And I think false accusation against a staff member needs to stay level 4, which is very serious and can result in the student being removed from the school, but put in this success pathway program online. The other one that I believe needs to stay at level 4, still a very serious behavior that needs to be dealt with in a very serious way, is sexual harassment. Because that is the one, unlike the other sexual offenses, battery, sexual offense, and assault, that one's words versus actions. And I believe that one needs to stay at level 4. Again, considering we're also talking about pre-K through 6th grade, we're not giving administrators any leeway to deal with the certain circumstances. And when I'm thinking about students, and again, I want to make sure we're giving super principals options, and they will have the option to send them out and put them on the pathway online. We have students who just don't know better, and they have been raised around this kind of verbiage. And if we allow them with sexual harassment to enter the behavior diversion program, to have that as an option, then they're going to be held to super high standards. They can write that stipulation conduct agreement however tight they want it. And then if the student is a repeat offender, we've already said this board's been already clear what we want to do with those stipulation agreements. If they're not meeting it, they're out. And not just if you make another sexual harassing comment. If you are, cussing at a friend or doing whatever, that can be however tight we want it. But I believe that we need the best opportunity for those students, especially for first-time offenders, is to give the principal the option to leave them on campus so they can get the social work help, they can get the counseling help, all the things that we discussed last time about the behavior diversion program, so they can get the help that they need. Knowing that principals and have the authority to do something more severe if they think it is there. So those are the 2 that I believe we need to move back over to 4 to avoid what you just talked about. Is let's leave level 5 just with the things that we're taking away options with level 5. But those are the ones I think we need to leave that option for the administrators so that they can deal with them according to the circumstances that brought it up.
Ms. Campbell, if I could just verify, so eventually, because everybody's kind of putting some ideas on the table, you'd like us to weigh in on whether sexual harassment and false accusation of staff should be moved from a level 5 to a level 4, correct? That's what you just said?
No, well, technically, I'm asking them to stay where they were.
Right.
They
Either
were
way.
level 4, to not be moved to level
Either way,
5. Yes.
that's one thing. And then did you have any other requests that you had that you were for the board to decide on?
No.
Because I understand what we were doing. I was just trying to make sure that we address them in a minute, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So a couple things. First of all, under what Ms. Wright had suggested, I'm all for moving the, for physical aggression, moving that to a level 5 for a BPS, how you worded that, BPS approved.
Yeah, but currently, right now, it says BPS school board employee in existing language, but yes, we had made some adjustments, and other ones are school board approved personnel.
Okay, well, school board approved personnel, I think, would be appropriate. But I'm supportive of that. I believe that one thing is with the giving discretion to the principals is great on one hand. I know from being a law enforcement officer previously that that is nice to have that, but it also leads to inconsistency. And one of the things I've heard, you know, over the last year and a half is that our discipline hasn't been consistent. I think it's gotten much better since this board, before my time, has taken over the last year, but that was one of the things I had heard was things were inconsistent. So I would like to see, personally for level 3, that we remove 1 to 3 days and just make it 3 days out. And level 4, remove the 1 to 5 days and remove the up to 10 days and just make it 5 days. And level 5 is 10 days pending expulsion. And do we have is it progressive discipline if you're a level 4 violation and then you do something totally different, or you do that same violation again? Is it progressive where you automatically go to level 5?
It's listed on the pages. Where is it? Because we added that on the page. Where's the part that says if you do it more than once? Yeah, under special consideration.
Okay.
Oh, repeated.
I believe it's on the bottom there. It talks about repeated
Second.
acts more than, defined as more than 2 times.
That's the repeating the same act, correct?
That would be repeating of the same act, yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
means you can level up.
But if you could do 2 level 4s and still be on a level 4.
Well, if you do 2 level 4s, most likely you would be on a 10-day pending and possibly removed to an alternative placement or a setting. So I don't want to speak too broadly here, but usually if someone commits 2 level 4s, that's usually not something that's going to happen concurrently. That'll be something that they're being probably recommended for alternative placement for that first level 4.
If there's a way of removing that usually and making it part of the policy, I think that would be, remove some of that inconsistency. Regarding what Ms. Campbell suggested, I also think those are good suggestions as far as moving the false accusation and sexual harassment back to keeping it at level 4. And my apologies, Ms. Dampierre, when we went over this, I probably should have caught that, but that was a good catch by you. But I do think it does give a little bit of, I think it's a good suggestion. And then there was a couple things on here that that weren't on that are in the code that I just caught that did not come up. One is a couple things that are currently level 2 that, you know, I just thought they were a little low for what they are. One is the possession of ammunition. Second one is a forgery, and because that's a felony, and that's only a level 2 on our discipline policy. This is for secondary. All these comments are secondary to high school,
Okay.
or through high school, or secondary. And then the last one was possession of stolen property, because I think that needs to have a dollar value, because it's one thing to possess a stolen pencil, and it's another thing to possess a Rolex watch of somebody else's. So I think there's got to be some kind of standard stipulation of what constitutes a level 2 versus maybe a higher level for possession of stolen property. And I would suggest maybe $100 or greater, but leave that up to the board if they so choose to move forward with that suggestion. And my only last comment is just the, you know, I've said it before, but I know there's certain guidelines we have to go by, but when you get to the point of a student being expelled, I think they should be expelled. And it's, you know, by that point, there's a penalty that they need a price they need to pay. And that's it.
Great, thanks. Mr. Souza?
Mr. Thomas, can you read what you wanted us to look at? I know you had weighed in on the false accusation of staff and sexual harassment, but you had also said something about some of those level 2s that you were concerned about. I was trying to make a list here so that we can all kind of follow.
Is my
through
mic
and help
on?
out Gene.
Okay. I suggested right now under level 2, we have ammunition possession. And my thought behind that is normally kids don't just walk around with bullets. There's probably a reason why somebody has bullets and maybe somebody else has a gun. But just the possession of ammunition should be higher than a level 2. Forgery, that's a felony in the real world, so I think that is, should be appropriate. I'm talking about for secondary, not for elementary school. And then the last one was possession of stolen items, because that can be, like I said, there's a difference between a stolen pencil and a stolen Rolex watch. So I think there should be a value where if it's over $100 or greater, maybe that possession of a stolen item is a level 3 or 4, whatever the board so chooses. But I just think it should be higher than a level 2.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I also didn't want to say the same thing anybody else was saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the other reason. Okay. So Ms. Dampier. Ms. Dampier, for the next one, I'm just going to go through the student code of conduct and just kind of go through what I saw. All right, let me just keep going. All right. One of the things it says, responsibilities of parents and guardians. In there, I was looking through there to try to find out if,
What page?
page 6, I'm sorry. I should do a better job of that. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Encourage your appropriate student behavior and all that stuff. It doesn't say anywhere there that it says you should review the discipline with your student. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we want to put it in there, if you feel that this is all there. But one of the things that I keep going back to is I tell these parents, you know, you should know what's inside of here and have a conversation with your kid. Because there's a lot of things that we do that have real bad ramifications. And when your kid does them, you come screaming back to us, I didn't know this, I didn't know this. You've got to do it. That's all. So if you feel, like I'm not advocating for it, but if you feel like this touches that and hones that in, that's great. And to be honest with you, I doubt many parents are going to open up the student code of conduct, go to page 6 and say, oh, that's what I should do. But I can at least reference it when I'm going in and I have the argument with parents who may not do that and they have a child that made a decision that is inappropriate.
We can add that if the board chooses to.
Something like that.
They do have to sign off and said they read it.
Right. but-
They do. They do
Something
sign
that
off,
just
but we can
says
put
that
something.
They're gonna review it, because what happens is that then we can go back and say, well, you know, you signed this thing and you should have reviewed it, but here's one little thing. So that was just a weird one that I had. Okay, so when we're reading through these level 1s through 5s in both the elementary and middle school, you know, something that came up years ago, and I keep honing in on it when these things come up, is a Good Samaritan law. To where we hold kids accountable that may see something, that don't want to say something because they feel that the level of pushback from their friends is going to be bigger than the level of pushback from the school district. Does that make sense? Have we ever entertained a Good Samaritan law to say that if you watch or see something, you have to report it? Does that make sense?
It's in policy.
Where is that? What is that? And I'm going to look it up. I'll look it up. If it's in policy, then that's fine.
I believe we have an existing code, failure to report criminal offenses.
Do we need to put that inside of here as one of these levels? Because it might be inside of policy, we may have some of those. And that's what Ms. Wright was kind of commenting about, with some of these things that may be over here, that may be over there, that do we need to put something in here? I don't know. Finding out that if you do not report something that you see, depending on the level, if I'm part of if I'm sitting there and I see some kids breaking into a school and then I'm later found on a video, should I be held accountable? And at what level?
Page 46.
Yeah.
Okay.
Failure to report.
Okay, so so page 46, I got
That's the
you, but where is
definition.
that inside of the code of like,
Yeah,
Level 1.
it's a level 1.
all right, okay. Okay. I mean, if everybody's okay with the level 1 being, you know, those corrective actions and stuff like that, not reporting.
No, sorry, Mr. Susan, they misspoke. Failure to report criminal offense is a level 4.
Okay. And that's on page, what'd you say, 46? I'm sorry, I missed it.
The definitions on page.
47 is the page
Okay,
of
here.
the
Page 12.
definitions. Oh, you're talking about, oh.
Yeah,
Sorry.
in
So it's
the
there.
draft form, it's on page 46.
So we're saying, when we say criminal offense, is that any offense that's inside of here, or what is the definition of that?
Right here, sorry.
I will.
I'll read it to you. Students who are aware of serious offenses, which include but are not limited to the possession of weapons, firearms, and drugs, and have failed to report that information to a teacher or administrator at their earliest opportunity.
So weapons, drugs, do we have fighting, do we have disrespect to teachers, do we have, you know what I mean? So if a student watching, you see what I mean?
Well,
No, now, we do have something, if they're videotaping a fight,
Oh, I got that.
that's the major.
that's a cyber
Yeah, that's,
thing, yeah.
I've got that
Right,
covered.
but the
over there.
definition does say students who are aware of serious offenses,
Which is,
which include but are not limited to
right.
weapons, firearms, drugs. So serious offenses,
could mean,
To me, that's
Include a
vague.
lot
Can
of
we
the
put
others.
like level 4 and 5 offenses or something in there? Could we do something like that? I don't know. It's just me.
It's
Again,
clear enough to me. I mean, I hear you. That one. I'm not sure where you're trying to go with that.
here's what it is that we have a series of situations where after the fact, we find out, after we've done all this investigation, that there are other people that are involved, and they never came forward. And sometimes things are not clear, like, all these different things. There's kids that watch fights, there's kids that do these things, and they don't ever report it. And it just gives an opportunity for us to tell those kids, hey, if you don't report this, then you will be held accountable to the same standard that these individuals that were doing so were. And it just falls to the bottom line. So we don't have to do it if everybody's kind of like, this is a
I
gray
feel
area.
like it's already in there, though.
Yeah, it's not truly defined, so it's okay. I'm okay with that. I've got more.
Mr. Susan, I understand where you're trying to go with it, and I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, I just,
Well, you're just saying like level 4 and 5, so like failure to report a level 4 or 5
right.
under the student behavior. I don't, yeah, I mean, they should
We
be
have a lot,
reporting this.
here's just an example. So there's students that are very nasty to teachers and to staff and everything else, right? Or they do things to the teachers, or they do stuff, and it could be, or anybody else, and it just doesn't get reported. You see kids that are being attacked inside of a school. So like it might be, somebody might be, online, bullying a kid inside of a school and stuff like that, but there's not being reported. And if there's somebody that's held accountable to know that if I see this, I'm supposed to report it, then we might catch some more of it before it becomes an issue. I can do a better job and bring it back next year, but my concern is that just saying those things on there is just doesn't define it all, but I can do a better job and come back.
What if you just said, what if it said failure to report criminal offense or level 4 or 5 student behavior incident? Like if we added that, that would cover those. Do you think those are okay? Would that help?
That would, I just don't know what the
So-
backlash
I
on
think
that
you're
would
actually
be.
missing out on a few level 3s.
Yeah, I was
that you
gonna
would
say.
want to
Right.
report.
so then you,
I feel like we're here with this, and maybe it's a lack of understanding of exactly, but, there's two ways to do that. First of all, a student doesn't need to report something that happens to a teacher because the teacher, these are things that we're not catching. These are the things that we need students to report to us, which they do all the time. Yes, things are falling through the crack, but it says the definition is for criminal offenses. I think there's two ways to go about it. One is the punitive way, which is this, which we have. If you saw something and you didn't say something, and we have to prove it, that we know you were aware of it and you didn't say anything, then you are this level 4, which is very serious. But the other part is the ongoing efforts that we have to educate students on the importance of them, especially when it comes to bullying, which I think you're referring to part of that, and is to make sure that they are doing that. And that has to come from both sides. I know we're not dealing with the positive side right now, we're just doing the punitive side, but I feel like we have a good definition here for what we're trying to do. If we start monkeying with, and honestly, some of these even level 1, 2, 3 changes, I'll just go ahead and weigh on these, some of the ones that were mentioned. We have this committee who went through people who are in the trenches doing it. They did all this work of leveling, and they're moving it every year. Except for what we've been asked to do, which is level 4s and 5s, because we made these changes without the committee and without their input because we made this change late in the game.
Wait, you mean to tell me that if we make a change here, that you would be upset because we didn't go through the discipline committee for it?
Nope, don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, I was just.
I'm just saying, when we as board members individually are looking, I think this needs to be here and this thing, we did that a couple years ago. We did, and we made some changes. But I want us to be very thoughtful about the way we're changing this and realize that in the process of moving things around over the last couple of years, we've done a good job of getting that support and perspective of people who are in the classroom, people who are administrators, people who are in the community, and who have been looking at this and digging deep into all of it, including district staff. I haven't heard any suggestion of changes of these 1, 2s, and 3s that I'm like in love with doing if we don't have that feedback.
So, I'm not a hill that I'm gonna die on, but here's what it is that in one argument you made that the kids may not know what the difference between sexual harassment and is and is not. In the same regard, there's some kids that may not think that certain behaviors are negative and may not report them. So I'll do a better job, and I'll come back to it, it's not a big deal, but I do feel that we don't do enough of that to hold kids accountable for the Good Samaritan law. So I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir?
I would support if we clarified it and said that failure to report a level 3 or higher. I think that might be appropriate.
Let's take a look at it.
You know, I'm just afraid of what Dr. Rendell said also, is putting a number on that. There might be some lesser issues that we don't want to overlook. I mean, reporting bad behavior is reporting bad behavior regardless.
We want to encourage
Sure.
Wow, look at that,
Let-
that might work.
positive side.
That
We
might
want
work.
to encourage everybody to be forthright no matter what. But if there's a serious crime like bullying, for instance, and what was the other one that was in there as level 3 that particularly stood out to me, that you should have a responsibility to report, physical.
I would be interested to see how many referrals have been written under this code in the district. I mean, I don't know that this is maybe the culture that has been expressed to students on making sure you see something, you say something. And now with Fortify Florida and Speak Out, the anonymous reporting mechanism is there, and that adds a little more confusion, because what if they are reporting it there and we don't know? And
Good point.
you know what I'm saying? So those are things to just consider when we look at it, because they may be reporting things that don't make it back to us.
So when I look at this, good point, Ms. Wright, I look at this and I see level 3, bullying, counterfeit, gross insubordination, inciting, leaving school campus, network, internet misuse, out of area, major physical aggression, pantsing, pornographic material, possession of potentially dangerous object, profane, obscene, sexting, testing security violation. I like that. That's something I was going to bring up in a minute. Trespassing and vandalism under 1,000. I think if you're watching any of that, you should report it. There's not a single thing in there that I wouldn't hold a kid accountable for not reporting. I mean, I think you should report these things. I don't know. What do you guys feel?
Well, I think the wording that says if you're aware of a serious offense, many of those things that you talked about there, in my opinion, are serious offenses. If anything, the title at number 30, failure to report a criminal offense.
Maybe it's just a serious offense?
Yeah, I mean,
But that's the thing is that Ms. Campbell just made a really good point is that if you're going to try to move some of these things as sexual harassment over, knowing what is a serious offense is
What-
left up to the individual, and that's what I was saying.
Too subjective.
It's too subjective.
well, I think if it's in our code of conduct, it's a serious offense.
Well, if it is, then that means that all level 1 through 5 we're supposed to report. And then, I mean, it's,
Do we feel that we have an issue in the district that we have schools saying, we can't pursue this case because we've had all these witnesses, but they won't come forward? I haven't had any, I'm just saying.
I see teachers do it, I see kids do it. I mean, it's a thing. Like, I've seen teachers that won't report things that go on because they're afraid. I've seen kids that won't report things that are afraid. That's all. I
You
mean,
know we can't hold the teachers.
I know, but what I'm saying is that it's common across it's across our thing. I mean, I do.
We have a policy that says that teachers are supposed to report those things. It's same thing, everybody who's aware of whatever, for certain things like our Title IX policies and our bullying policies, all those things. So if, not just technically, but if a supervisor realizes that a teacher has seen something and didn't report it, I mean, they could be up for discipline.
We
So-
do a really good job with bullying, and we do talk about if you see something, we can add that to our training at the beginning of the year to clearly define what their responsibility is to, as far as reporting. We can add that to our trainings, because we have a video that every student has to view at the beginning of the year about the code of conduct changes.
And Mr. Susan, if you want 3 in there, 3, 4, and 5, I support that. Those are all hefty offenses that I would hope a student would report to somebody, honestly.
Mr.
so.
Chair?
That's a
Sure.
majority.
So
So we got
my only last comment on that is it does give, not that we'd like to see it, think every kid would, every student would stand up and say, hey, I saw Johnny do this. But this, by having level 3 or up, it does give that student a little cover that he has to say something or he's going to get in trouble.
So that's a
So
majority.
we're
Okay.
changing it?
Just
Yeah,
add it to
Level
3 to
3 and above.
I don't know. I just go back to, okay, because here, I mean, why are we putting a number on it? Because I want students who see ammunition possession or gambling going on or tobacco
Okay.
or,
So add 'em.
you
Put
know,
1 through 5.
I want
1
them.
through 5.
I want them
Like,
to
I'm
support
just-
it,
I'm just-
you know?
Is that a motion,
What-
sir?
What you're getting at, I'm not sure the language is going to create,
Their desired effect.
yeah, right. I mean, we can put
It's enforcement.
everything, you must say everything. I don't know, enforce.
And
Okay,
are
that's-
also we asking our administrators to track everybody down who might have been aware of this and didn't say something, and let's
No,
penalize.
I don't think
Because
that.
the language is there already, here's my only thing, is the language is there already for them to enforce it if they wanted to, because it says a serious offense. If you're being pulled in by a dean, for example, that's already a serious offense, because most of the students are in class not committing serious offenses. So, I mean, we can make the language as tough as possible, but if it's not being
Right,
enforced,
the implementation
I
is
mean,
what
we could,
matters.
that's my only thing. We could make, Dr. Rendell, what's your input on this?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First, if you look at the title, this was probably written for criminal offenses. When we first put it in, it says failure to report criminal offenses, and it lists possession of weapons, firearms, drugs, which are criminal offenses. So I think when it was written, that's what we were thinking. If you knew that a kid had drugs on campus and you didn't tell anybody, you knew a kid had a weapon on campus, you didn't tell anybody, you knew a kid had a gun on campus, you didn't tell anybody. I think that's what that was written for. If we want to broaden it to say you need to tell us of any serious offense, then the title needs to be changed. It should be failure to report serious offenses. And you could leave the rest of the definition as it is, or you could say, including but not limited to level 3 offenses and higher. Then you could still go grab a level 1 or 2 if you needed to.
I like
But
it.
then we're leaving it at level 4. We're going to give them a level 4 consequence for not reporting a level 3 offense.
Right.
So let's
And
stop and
just
think
to
about.
jump on that,
Yeah.
it was probably criminal because there could be constitutional issues with trying to compel students to speak out for non-criminal offenses, because criminal, you can say, is a safety issue in the school. We need to keep it safe. I saw you push Johnny into the toilet in the bathroom. Isn't criminal necessarily, so trying to compel that speech from a student and then disciplining them could raise constitutional issues. So it's something I would have to look at. I haven't looked at it, so depending on the circumstance, it could be. So, I mean, it's possible that trying to capture, you have to report every act you see that violates a school rule could violate constitutional principles. I don't know for sure. I'd have to look at it, but
So this one says, a level 4 is failure to report a criminal offense, which is okay. And then level 1 somewhere was said that failure to report, is that what it was?
No, he just.
No, that was it.
That's it, it's not.
So then we can put a failure to report other behaviors and have 2 of them, right?
Well,
We could,
Well,
but I
yeah,
think Mrs. Wright actually made a good point earlier that maybe we should go look and see how many of these we've actually, how many times we've actually used this. And, you know,
well, and then the anonymous factor of students being able to report through those 2 apps, I think that might make it just hard. I'm with you, Mr. Susan, 100% on, I want students to report if you see something. I don't want a student to feel as though, and if this policy or this student code of conduct gave them the shield to feel like, hey, I have to report it. If you're thinking of it like that as a mechanism there, I think really what needs to happen is it needs to be accurately trained and taught to our school sites to be able to convey it to students as well, because I don't know how often they're looking at this thing.
They
And
never do.
They never look
They
at
never
it,
will.
and so.
No.
And creating a
Well, the
culture,
schools do,
and
but-
creating a culture in a building.
Right.
Where students feel safe to report that. And the
Right.
carrot and the stick model is not going to, I don't think is going to get across what you're wanting to do.
So what are we going to do? We've got a majority to go to 3
so
to 5. But what are we gonna do?
I suggest that we leave what's in the code of conduct written the way it is and talk about a different offense or definition, if you want, for failure to report other offenses.
That would make more sense.
But I don't know if that's, I
And
almost
then-
feel like I'd like to talk to the deans a little bit and see, do they really need this?
Okay.
So,
Well, and Mr. Gibbs brought up the constitutional violation
Yeah.
potential there, so I think that's worth exploring. So compelling children to,
So we have a student that watches something happen. We get it on videotape. We go through a huge investigation. We get to the end of it and we find that. We don't hold them accountable for doing it if it's not a criminal offense? Talk to me about that scenario.
So, Mr. Susan, in the time that I've been here since 2019, I've seen, I believe, just 2 times that a student has been recommended for ALC placement based on this. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was for someone coming on campus, a non-student with a potentially dangerous object, and the school went ahead and utilized that as in this code exactly for that. And just, I can't speak of how many times have been used, because you can use a level 4 without recommending ALC placement. So we can run the numbers, but in the time that I've been in discipline, I've only seen it used twice to be recommended for ALC placement.
And so, just so everybody understands, when I went through this before, and when we go through the discipline, giving the opportunity to create a culture where students feel like they have to do X, Y, and Z to be a part of it, whether that's stronger discipline, whether that's an opportunity. If they feel like somebody else was there and they feel like that person may report, they may feel compelled to report. Giving that opportunity to me means a lot, because that would mean that we would capture a lot more of the stuff that's going on. That's all. And it would also inhibit a lot of people from actually trying to do things if they knew that Joey over there was watching and that they would have to be reported. It gives that extra piece. But just like you guys said, it's not the hill I want to die on. We have a majority of board to go to 3 to 5, but Dr. Rendell makes a good point. Let's look if it's legal, let's separate it and see. That's all. I'm okay with that, if that's okay with you guys.
And again, we can make sure that that is explained in our beginning of the year code of conduct, so they know what that actually means.
Well, let's go and make sure that it's not something we don't
Right.
need to put in, and then we'll come back to it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and then something came on okay, so if we go to page 12, still we're in elementary, but it's kind of something that I was going to bring up. Use of devices that records or takes information. So I don't know if you guys are aware of what happened recently at one of our schools, but we caught what's known as a flipper. And I don't know if you guys are aware of what a flipper is. I had no idea.
I am unfortunately no.
So what happens is that there's a device that students or somebody can use that comes and gets close to you and can pull all your information off of your phone. It can pull information off of the screens. It can pull information off of anything it gets in touch with. It was caught at one of our schools. The kid was reported, but because the staff didn't know what to do with it, they gave it back to the parent. The parent then took it home. And the kid wasn't even, you know what I mean? I think it's something that we need to address. And I would say that if somebody's bringing that, there is an intent to do harm to somebody or something. And I know that there's some guidelines that are kind of vague in here about, devices, but I did not see where any of that was actually addressed directly. Now, I know that Officer Klein was moving on some sort of policy or something to address it, but it's the use of a wireless device in a way that's not really defined in here. Does that make sense to you?
Do we currently
Yeah.
have something,
I went through the
I
need
definitions.
we're not
generalization.
going to not punish
I
a
mean,
kid for something like that because we don't
Again,
have specific
the
code.
Well, we didn't.
terminology, we have I think this is what Mr. Sousa might have been referencing. There is an existing broad terminology with the electronic telecommunication device misuse major. I mean, it could encapsulate in there. We would, if we're wanting something to specifically mention that, perhaps adding language that says, to include but not limited to, we could add something like that, or the actual creation of a new code would be something we'd have to.
I'll be honest with you, we already had a failure at our school by not adversely addressing it, capturing it, and doing it because it's vague already. And I would like to put it in there. And again, I'm saying this is because I need the support of the board, but I think that we should address it specifically and put in there the use to capture personal information, data, or anything like that. And I think it should be an expellable offense, at least a level 4. That's where I put it over here. Because we have right now the use of wireless devices and all that stuff falls under like a level 1, and then there's 15 different levels. I mean, that it might be able to be construed that way, and I didn't want it to happen again. That's all.
I think it would fall under robbery, the taking or attempted taking of money or other property from the person or custody of another with the intent to permanently or temporarily deprive the person of that. That's a level 4.
So I hear you, but I don't think that directly defines what that use is, because it's not only utilizing our personal banking information, other things. It's, you know, robbery is one thing, then we get into the, is it over 1,000, under 1,000, over 750, under 750? Just put it in there that it's a level 4 offense.
And they have network and internet misuse they have to use. They have to use that. That's in the level 4 area.
I mean,
So
I don't-
it might be enforcement. I mean, if.
Right. I mean, I don't think that we are letting kids get away with stuff like that because we don't have
did.
a specific code. I would think they're going to find the code that they need to take care of that.
Ms. Campbell, it happened. It happened recently.
Right. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I hear you that it happened, but I'm saying I don't. If administrators didn't have the tools they need to get it into level 4, I think that I can see a couple of things that would qualify under. So, are you saying that they didn't have a?
I'm addressing
code?
the fact that we should put inside of definition, the fact that if those type of devices are utilized or brought on campus, that the student is to a level 4 that gives the opportunity for them to expel, but we need to confiscate it. What ended up happening is we don't even know what they got on it. We don't even know what they recorded. We gave it back to them. And they could have recorded 100 kids' information and been going and then we're putting ourselves in a liability because now all of a sudden those kids go back and they use that for something else, and then we've got identity theft and everything else.
So
It
I
is
think
a
one of the
really
tricky,
bad things.
They are. And unfortunately, one of the tricky things that happens with this is that they're targeting really children, and they make it look like it's a fun little game that you're going to play, and then all of a sudden you get this device near a computer, near your. I mean, it can literally mimic your ID cards, your credit cards. It's pretty scary. So I think where I would 100% support that. I think this is a new code that needs to be made, and really it's going to pertain more so into our secondary world because. I don't know that the primary world, really, a child that's bringing that to a primary school I don't think the intent is there to try to do something like that. Now, our older kids get a little more smart and
there's
they
probably
figure if
not
they
many
can get
kids.
all the
Yep.
answers to the test on every, whatever, that maybe that might be. I think it's worth exploring and adding a new code. And I would just, my recommendation would be, hey, can we talk to district security about this? Because they know more about this, and just figure out what that needs to be and add it.
What it
It needs to
means,
go
what
to level
language.
4 though, because it probably, maybe 5, I don't know. It's pretty serious.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Pam.
We can add a new code, and we can add it, because, all of this is talking about electronic devices, but a level 4 and above,
Yeah.
specifically putting that information on here like we did with the smart glasses, trying to encapsulate everything dealing with that wireless devices. And and we will speak to Major Klein, these kids are getting so smart, so maybe coming up with using that, but a broader, because if we put flipper, then there's gonna be another.
Oh, I agree. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's why
Right.
we went with smart glasses instead of that other, so any type of, we'll talk with him and ask, is there a generic, and of course, we'll talk to legal as well. That's why we went with the smart glasses instead of
The
the
brand.
meta glasses.
Right.
Kind of like a non-human-like attributes
Yeah.
definition.
Just what I think
That
we
was
understand.
brilliant. Whoever, I think that was.
Well,
I
also
don't
the
know.
continuation of the communication with administration, and including the deans, because as Ms. Campbell said, if you look up and down level 4, there are plenty of titles that we could have put this under. So again, we can have all the language in the world if an administrator says, well, it's not specifically here, or they don't care to do that, and they just don't enforce it. So again, educating the administrators of what's the newest things that they're trying to get away with, and saying that, hey, find something in our code of conduct that it's going to fall under. If it's not, you wouldn't let them go home with it, that type of thing.
And we're going to be, we just spoke today about our training. A lot of times we do our training where it's more of sit and get. We're going to use some scenarios for the principals. Actually, on our the August 6th PD day, we want to use some scenarios so they can get used to it and actually be able to collaborate and give some examples instead of us giving them the information. They actually need to be working alongside and be, have some processing time to make sure they have a clear understanding. A lot of times our trainings are rushed, so we want to make sure that we have some time dedicated to all of these changes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on that, I just think it's a tip of the iceberg from what we're going to face in the future. And I think it's a great catch. And when I saw the memo from Major Klein, but it's a great observation by Mr. Susan. I think there's a big difference between cheating using an electronic device and the intention of stealing somebody's information, especially if a student happens to grab a teacher's personal information. It can be used against them. There could be photos. I mean, who knows what those items can capture. So I would just, my thought is that it should be a level 5 for that and not be, that's a lot more serious than just trying to cheat on a test.
Agreed. So you guys will look at it, come back? Okay.
So for clarity, we're looking at requesting a new incident code for potentially a level 5, specifically for devices that can capture personal data.
In secondary,
In
in
secondary.
elementary, it might fall somewhere else, but in secondary, I would say definitely at that level, because some kids bringing that with that intent of doing that, and we can't even take the opportunity to think that they may not have, because they could come on and say, oh, I didn't do anything, but they had you bring that on campus, there's only one thing that you're doing with it, it's the intent to do that.
So that was my question, was possessing versus using?
Possession.
You're saying it should all be the same.
All I'm saying, because you can't bring those things it should be known never to bring that stuff in our schools.
Mr. Chair, I would just also like to ask Paul to research how, is there any legal way of us being able to access that,
Yeah.
to be able to see what's on there, to see if anything was captured, or is that something law enforcement would have to try to
Right.
get a warrant for, or what the legal guidelines are for that?
And the reason behind it is that right now our policy is that we give the phones back, which is the way that the administrator did it. It was like, hey, look, this must be like a wireless device. I have the parent come in. Here's what it is. That was the process that went through that. And I don't fault them at all. This is what they were reading. So we need to be able to confiscate, keep, search, that kind of stuff.
More like a weapon or
That's
a
it. Yep.
vape. or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep. You good with that? You guys understand the direction? Okay, good. Next one is I agree with you, Ms. Campbell. The false accusation of a staff member, for me, it's the gray area, right? Because one, there's false accusation of a staff member with malice that I think should be expelled. Boom, you're done. And then the other side, though, is that there's other accusations that they make about teachers that we don't want to fall under this, right? Have you guys, your feeling is that, Ms. Campbell, if I can hear you right, false accusation against a staff member moving from a level 5 to a level 4 gives them that opportunity to identify and do stuff? Is that what you were saying?
Leaving it at level 4, which is where it was.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry. I know you
I know,
keep
but I'm going to
correcting me.
clarify that every time because I just want to, I'm just clarifying.
trying to
It's
set
been
you
a
up.
level 4.
I got you. I got
don't
you.
want it to, I don't think it needs to move to
Yeah,
level
yeah,
5.
yeah.
That way the administrators have those options depending on the severity.
And then the question I think Ms. Wright made is that might leave too much of a gray area to allow kids that may be making accusations against staff to, because we have a couple that I'm aware of right now that should have been in here, that they should have been expelled. And they were in elementary school. They're vicious. They were vicious kids. And they affected one of our teachers to the point where they almost quit. Actually, 3 of them. So I understand that they need to go, but our principals didn't feel that way because of what happened. So is there an opportunity to split these, to say something like false accusation against staff members with malice or something, or do we want to keep it at a level 4?
Wouldn't
This
false
is
accusation kind of constitute malice? I mean, that to
well,
me,
like so. Sometimes they say false accusation might be something like the teacher did this, this, and this. Right? It's just a false accusation, and the teacher gets mad. They file this thing, and then all of a sudden the principal's looking down, and they're like, "Shoot, I got a level 4 now. I got to expose."
What about if it resulted in disciplinary action to the teacher? Because sometimes that, I mean, well, I guess that doesn't really happen there. You have to have an investigation. My whole concern with this and wanting to move it from a 4 to a 5 is that false accusations can literally ruin a teacher's career.
Absolutely.
They can ruin their life. They can send them
Absolutely.
to jail. And to me, I'm like, that, a child shouldn't be able to hurl a false accusation that causes someone's entire world to be uprooted and not have a really serious penalty behind it. So,
Level 4 are very serious penalties. Just going to remind us, once again, very serious penalties that the administrators will have the option of sending them out.
Well,
I mean, for me, I would keep it at a 5, but if the board's will is to move it to
No,
a 4, or move it back to a 4, sorry.
I would
Should
say
there be
if we can't-
clarification
I-
between
100%,
criminal
that's okay.
accusation and just an
What I would,
accusation?
yeah, what you're good. There it is, John. I would say if we can't disseminate between whether it's going to be non-criminal, criminal, and all that stuff, I want it as a 5. But if we can give it out an opportunity, because I'll be honest with you, I don't want it to be even a question. If somebody makes an accusation against a staff member that with malice that's found that they did that inappropriately and it was wrong, not somebody that might have seen something or something like that, we expel that kid, and we need to send a message because our staff is our staff, it's our people. But if a kid makes a smaller accusation, that's up to me. I want to keep it at 5 if we can't disseminate. Megan wants to be there, Ms. Wright wants to be there. I think Mr. Thomas wants to be there?
And again, like false accusation, like, let me just clarify, I guess that's where you're right.
Right.
Because I'm like, if a little Johnny comes up and said, you know, hey, my teacher called me a not nice word, curse word, okay?
Right.
And they didn't, that would still constitute technically a false accusation against
So-
the teacher, right? And so that obviously wouldn't be something where I'm like, oh, little Johnny, you're no longer in school. But now, if a student makes an accusation against a coach that says that they inappropriately touched them or did something and they didn't do that, that's a whole different game. Both of them are false accusations. So how do you delineate between which one is more serious than the other? And Paul, maybe we need some guidance from you.
One could be non-criminal, one
Well-
could be criminal.
Yeah, that's true.
A criminal complaint,
Just like
accusation
we
versus
have-
a non-criminal.
Just like we have the reporting by a student on a criminal offense, you know, this, I think we look at that, one person reads false accusation against a staff member, and Ms. Wright thinks of immediately criminal. right?
Criminal is what I'm talking about when I'm
Correct.
saying that.
But yeah, we have lots of, you know, my teacher did this, and it's not criminal, and now that's a level 5. You know, if they said that I'm an ugly kid, and it was proven it wasn't true, but now it's a level 5.
Okay.
So is there?
Is there a way to
Justin,
disseminate
I'll also just mention, I mean, take this how you want. We have a false reporting code technically right now. It resides as a level 2 for secondary level 1, and it reads intentionally providing false or misleading information to or withholding valid information. I mean, how you interpret that, that could be, like you saying, a more of a,
Well, no, I don't
you're
even
saying a
think that-
bad name or something like that. We
Right.
can always level it up to something higher than a level 1 or 2 if we wanted to.
So what if we just added false criminal accusation against a
Yes.
staff member? Would
I-
that alleviate
I'll be
this?
honest with you, by having that back end, since this is my baby, by having that back end of that policy sitting out there, that means they're going to go to that rather than go to this on some of those. If we clearly define this as criminal, then I think we're in a good spot.
Paul, what do you think?
Good point, Mr. Thomas.
I'd want to mull it over.
Okay.
That's a
just
very
popped out, yeah.
lawyerlish answer.
Yeah, just think about how the best way to delineate criminal is, I would say, better than some with the, you might want to consider adding language to the lesser offense just to encompass false
Yes.
accusations on a lower level that don't rise to the criminal level. But yeah, I want to consider the proposed changes.
Right. Good
Okay.
point, good point. So we know what we're up.
Yeah, can you repeat? We just want to.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're capturing here.
So the idea on the table is, and thank you, Mr. Thomas, for suggesting this, and Ms. Wright, false criminal accusation against a staff member.
Level 5.
Okay, level 5. So that encompasses anything that's criminal. And then have a redefinition, according to Mr. Gibbs, based on that other one that you just mentioned, being more clearly defined, so that it's not vague enough to where they can capture level 5s. Does that make sense?
And that can be a level 4.
I would love that, yes?
We have minors and majors, we use that language.
That was
This
going to
would
be my suggestion, is that we just say false accusation against a staff member major,
Yep.
false accusation against a staff member minor, and then we define them in the
Perfect.
definition. a little bit.
Perfect.
Because if you use the word criminal, there may be a really serious false accusation that's not criminal,
Yep,
and you would want to go to a level 5,
yep,
It gives
and-
us the most.
but it's not criminal.
love it.
So I think major and minor would be the way to go.
Right.
But we'll wordsmith it.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, the next one, same page 13, kind of level 5s kind of stuff, but we had a situation recently this year where there was a student that was involved in a behavior off campus that initiated a very strong cultural fear inside of my schools, right? I read inside of here some language, but it wasn't clearly defined under level 5. We had said the idea is that does the actions of a person off campus initiate the ability for the school to go ahead and expel that student for behavior? And I found it somewhere inside of here when I was reading, but it's not listed under level.
Suspension.
Go ahead.
Felonies,
Suspension.
you can expel or alternatively place until the crime is resolved. If they're convicted, then you can keep them off during dependency. If it doesn't disrupt the school environment and something happens off campus, we cannot discipline them. And that's the cheerleader case from the Supreme Court recently, where they were, F-bombing the cheerleading coach for not putting him on the varsity cheer squad. And they said it happened off campus. I don't know what the disruption was on campus over the event, but Supreme Court said that's protected. You can't discipline if it doesn't encroach on the school environment.
So if it's, so the felony piece, that's where I must have read it, yeah.
Yeah, the
Felony
felon,
suspension.
if they're arrested and charged with a felony, then we can place
can.
them while the felony charges are pending. If they plead down to a misdemeanor, then the felony charges go away, our placement goes away, they come back to school.
But if we find something that would affect the culture of the school, we're not, unless that person's been arrested for a felony, where there's no way for us to stop that individual from coming. That's where,
As long as it,
that's
if it's
where,
not disrupting the school environment and they plead down, there's nothing we can do about it.
all right. What I'd like to do, Mr. Gibbs, is ask if there's other things that can affect a school environment that may not be a felony, that may be out there, and see if we have the ability to expel a kid for behaving that way off of campus. Does
I
that
don't
make
know that
sense?
you can blanket that, it's gonna be more case by case.
Okay.
'Cause, I mean,
I'll get
somebody
with you
could
on that.
have, you know, like pass a nasty text or social media post off campus, but if it never reaches to the school environment and campus, then you're not gonna be able to discipline for it.
Okay.
Well, and if we have a student who is, for example, they're arrested for drunk driving, but while they're on our campus, they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're never a behavior problem, we're not going to.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
You know,
That's-
and that wasn't anywhere near what
That's
what
not
it
our lane.
was. There's just stuff that happens off campus that are indicators that then sends our schools into frizzies, and then we may not or may be able to. So I'll get with you, Paul, on that. All right, page 17, we crossed off threat to school, staff or student, but then I didn't see it anywhere else. Is there,
That's what he just talked to us about, they're moving it all to TRE.
Yes.
okay,
Assessor code.
okay, all right. In page 18, if you go, it says grand theft, $750 or greater. Cell phones are like $400, $500.
No, they're not. Have you bought a cell
Listen,
phone recently?
listen, I did for my daughter, and it was.
I'm like,
Listen,
they're like
listen.
$1,500.
Why you gotta
so-
open me up for what I buy my daughter? Come on.
Okay.
Why you gotta pick on me? Why you gotta pick on me? Listen, just because y'all buy your kids $1,500 phones doesn't mean I do. Anyways, here's the question. The question is when we define the theft of a cell phone, do we define it as the value of that phone being new or the value of that phone being used on a, how do we do that? How does that happen?
I believe it goes by retail value, sir.
Okay. And then do we want to keep grand theft at 750? Is that defined by statute, or do we want to drop
That is
that down?
defined by assessor.
All right.
So I believe last year, Mr.
All right.
Susan, they introduced a new code, and it's a level 2 of a larceny theft less than 750. It was defined and created a code for that.
Okay. All right. Easy enough. I just, somebody steals $700 worth of stuff that could wipe out an entire supply closet, and then they're not, they're not.
Which, by the way, you can be suspended for that.
Right, right. All right. Page 19, weapons possession. A couple of times when I was a teacher and a couple of times since I've been a board member, a student gets caught with a pocket knife from fishing or something like that. Is that still considered a weapon and they still get expelled automatically?
There's assessment.
No, it's, they specifically define knife blade links for weapons, so you gotta take the knife and you gotta
Okay,
run it
perfect.
through the
Just want to make
section.
sure.
What is, do you know what the definition?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
It's in here.
3
Okay.
inches probably or
It's,
something.
the knife blade, I believe, is under 4 inches. We would define it as a local code of potentially dangerous object. Anything with the knife blade is over the 4 inches is defined by statute 790 as a weapon.
Okay,
That's good.
thank you.
That's good. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. All right, if you go to page 20, get ready. I'm telling you,
You're
man.
like, we're gonna be
I'm
here.
telling you, we just went through, this was the thing that we did. All right, so page 20. If you read our electronic telecommunication devices, right, we go first offense, second offense, third offense. So a kid comes in, gets caught, we have those things. And the second one is we just say, we got to call the parent the second time, write another referral, and confiscate it until the parent must come in and get it. And then the third time, we have the parent-guardian conference, discipline referral, loss of cell phone privileges, which I don't even know what that is, may assign additional corrective strategies. There's no teeth in there, right? I've seen other districts move to serious suspensions and expulsions based on the behavior of the cell phones. Being the fact that it's such a large number of referrals for us, I would say that my concern is that I would like to put more teeth into this thing. I don't know about you guys, but I remember making a motion and we were 3-2 or 2-3 on banning cell phones
Yeah.
completely inside of our schools.
You and I were there, I think.
We were. It's okay, but it was a big jump. It was the middle of the year. It was a lot of stuff. What did the discipline committee bring up anything in here about putting more teeth into it for our people? Like it was one of our biggest referrals, you know?
What's the teeth? I mean, they can, I mean, and I hear you. You're wanting to make it be tough on crime, but these loss of cell phone privileges means they don't get to have a cell phone at school.
Yeah.
And assigned additional corrective strategies could be anything else, because if it's a repeat offense, you get to bump up. So they could be like suspended and move forward. So I'm not sure what more teeth, what's the teeth that you're looking for, because I think it's already in there.
And it says any violation beyond a third offense may result in out-of-school suspension up to a 10-day suspension. It goes on pending placement in an alternative setting. That does say after
As
the
it
third.
goes.
So it's like,
Well, I'd like to just suspend them for 10 days or 9 days in the third offense. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, or I'd like to ban the cell phones completely in the schools. One or the other. I mean, Orange County moved to it.
I don't think this is a one or the other, because this is still going to be here regardless of, there's still going to be saying we're banning them is not going to make them go away. So we're still going to have to deal with what are going to be the consequences if they violate it. So it's two different conversations. But
Right.
this is, what are we going to do? I see teeth, you know, in each of these. I'm not sure.
So
where that's at.
so my teeth would be that I would like to turn that third offense into a stronger, this will happen, okay? That's my suggestion. I need board approval. And then right now, I cannot make the motion, but I might do it tonight, to just ban the cell phones completely in the schools for next year. That's what I would like. This has been a complete situation where we've seen referrals going through the roof, and I think that would help our teachers and our administrators tremendously. I've had a lot of parents that have come out. So on this, I would like the third offense to be stronger, and I would suggest whatever you think in those regards, to a 5 to 10 day suspension or something like that. But it should be written in there that that's what's going to happen. Because I don't think, if I look at that I'm a parent, that I'm going to be too concerned about my kid consistently doing it. And this is a kid that's shown up 3 freaking times in the school and gotten busted doing something with their cell phones. And we were serious about making a thing against the cell phones, so that's all.
Well, I
So,
go back to what Mr. Trent said, is that enforcement problem.
well, if they're suspended, you're not having to enforce it because they're not in the school.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I understand where Mr. Susan's going and don't disagree. I think it's probably where we land on what the penalty might be, but I would suggest maybe, or at least for consideration, moving the third offense actions to the second offense, and then changing any violation beyond a second offense, instead of will result in an out-of-school suspension, and define whatever that is, whether it's 3 days or, I personally think 10 days or that big of a jump is pretty harsh, but,
Sure.
you know, a 3-day suspension for you know, beyond a second violation, for a third violation, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think that, to me, I'd be willing to do that. That is correct. I wouldn't go that.
Well, I mean, this was one of the topics that we brought up on the offsite, was as a board, we wanted to revisit
Yep.
the cell phone policy and actually do a little research and have some research done on how tough some of the policies have become, not only in Florida, but around the country. So, I mean, we could probably take some time and at a workshop, I know it's
Before
it's a
next
time
school year?
thing.
We
I
have
know.
that policy on this workshop, if we can ever
I
get
know.
done with this part.
That's right. So we had talked about really making a stand on the cell phones. So
Yep.
if this is the day we're going to talk about.
No, I
it.
think it's inappropriate to bring up such a heavy topic.
That's a big topic.
Like that. I would like to try to put it on a workshop, possibly talk about it soon, look at some of the ins and outs of it, do an evaluation. If Los Angeles Public Schools can ban cell phones completely, we can do the same thing.
We got to think of the
We can
feasibility.
do it, it's just what is right or
options.
wrong. I think it would lower our referrals, but that's me saying that hypothetically. If we can do that, Dr. Rendell, what do you think?
Just want to remind you, the policy is already that cell phones are not to be used during instructional time. I mean, we already have that. We've theoretically already banned cell phones.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
Well, though, there is that one caveat that the approval of the principal they're allowed to use it for instructional.
I understand, but when we say other districts have banned cell phones, they probably have the exact same rule in place.
Well, they banned them completely.
The only difference between what we're doing, what some other districts are doing, is they're not allowing them at lunch in between passing periods. We are only at the high school level, it's my understanding,
Correct.
allowing them during passing periods and at lunch. So if the board wants to make the decision to change that, because that's where we went a couple years ago, then that is a conversation that we can have. But we're not, I agree with Dr. Rendell, we're not doing anything different, except for some of them are doing that lunchtime passing period thing, which means now that our administrators are policing that time as well.
Well, so here's, and what I would say to that is this. We made this with the assumption, and I remember the conversation. We said we wouldn't go all the way because we want to give the opportunity for the individuals to be able to enforce it inside their classrooms. If you walk through your high schools right now, you have a problem with some teachers are not enforcing it. The last 5 minutes, sometimes last 10 minutes of a classroom, you see the kids on their cell phones.
And they shouldn't be doing that.
And
That's an enforcement problem. That's not a policy problem.
Okay, and the problem with this, is that regardless of where we put that, that is occurring. And so you have some teachers that are just like holding the line, trying to hold the line on the cell phones, and other individual teachers who are not able to hold the line and they let it go. So an administrator is forced now to deal with a teacher telling them that this teacher is not doing it and all these other things. If we were to remove them from the classrooms and from the schools, it makes sure that nobody would be able to be a part of would have that cell phone out at any time, and it slows it down because kids are walking into class, stuff like that. So that's not the hill I'll die on. I love your recommendation, Mr. Thomas, to move third to second and put that there. I'd like to hear input from other board members.
I'd support that. Move 3 to 2 and do a 3-day suspension if they're caught with it again. I support Mr. Thomas's
I have
idea.
no problem with it.
You're good. Ms. Campbell, you want to say something?
I think if the enforcement
enforcement.
is done the way that it's supposed to be done, that these levels I'm fine with the levels the way they are.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, you got that?
So we have a direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, page 21, tobacco use. Go through, so a kid is caught on campus, cigarettes or other forms of tobacco, not limited to electronic, okay, all that stuff. We call the parent, we write a referral and focus, and out of school suspension, 1 day, right? But we have kids that are smoking, and then he gets caught a second day, is a parent-teacher conference, 1 to 3, out of school suspension. I would like to move this up because I feel like somebody that's smoking tobacco is just as bad to me in a vape. We're trying to shut them down, right? How many students are we catching smoking tobacco as opposed to marijuana? Do you guys have that readily available?
I don't. I mean, our tobacco encompasses vapes, so it is a significantly high number. But we
Okay.
can research that number for you, sir.
I don't know if the board wants to. I would love to kind of move those up too, just like Mr. Thomas was saying. I feel that like you should have at least that level 2 as the level 1 and the level 3 as the level 2. I mean, here's the problem. Here's what I see, is that if I'm inside of there there's so many different materials that are considered tobacco now that are actually like drugs. And the reason that you cannot catch them as drugs is because they're not popping derivatively as THC or something else. So a kid is actually going in there utilizing this other form, which we are defining as tobacco because it can't be defined as the drug, and it's actually popping as tobacco. So the kids are actually using this way to get an avenue to get around the other side, if I'm making sense. If you go into a vape shop, there's 100 different vapes, 100 different things, and none of them are drugs, but they're utilizing different forms of things that are giving that same feeling to the kid. Under our guidelines, we're using only that would be defined as tobacco. And I just think that it should be stronger. That's my feeling. Board, do you guys want to weigh in?
I'm going to reiterate my thought from earlier, which is I don't like feels a little bit like flying by the seat of your pants. I'm just going to reiterate, except for the changes that we made, all the changes we're making right now, we're asking to be changed without getting any feedback from the people that will make us feel more confident in our decision making and how big of a problem these are. How well is what we're doing working? I don't like this way of decision making, and I'm just going to reiterate that. So except for those level 4 or 5 things, because that was a change that we made as a board with the alternative schools, I'm uncomfortable with the changes that have been mentioned without having that kind of data and feedback from the people who are on the ground.
So I would say, in a response to that I am not flying by the seat of my pants. I have been to the vape stores. I have looked at what is available out there. I have talked to a lot of our teachers, a lot of our administrative staff, and I've spent a lot of time on this. I've gone through and
As a board,
identified.
let me just be clear, not you
Ms. Campbell,
specifically
Ms.
flying by
Campbell,
seat
I
of
would
your
like to
pants, as a
finish my
board making our
conversation. Why are you interrupting me? The bottom line is that I've spent a lot of time on this, and this is the opportunity to talk about where it is. This hasn't been an opportunity to talk about this before. And if you're smoking tobacco and anything else that might be there that is not considered a drug, you should be held accountable a little bit more, is all I'm saying. I'm not flying by the seat of my
We're not
pants.
letting them get away with anything. They're
Ms.
being
Campbell,
suspended.
I did not disrupt you. If you can just wait. I'd like to hear the rest of the board weigh in on it, that's all. Just your thoughts.
Am I going first? All right. So my understanding is that when they're caught with the vapes, they actually are testing them for THC on a pretty regular basis, which is how we're finding a lot of those vape pens that way. As far as like smoking actual cigarettes, I don't think that's really happening so much in the schools anymore. It is the vapes. I mean, for the most part, because it's not detected the same way that, anybody lights a cigarette, you could smell it within miles away, it feels like, but the vaping pens are obviously different. Where I'm at with this, I guess, this one's a tough one for me, because kids are kids, and I'm like, okay, if we move them all up, which looks like what, parent conference, 1 to 3 day out of school suspension for their first offense. That's what you're suggesting, so the first time they're caught?
So you're caught. Now let me explain one other piece that I forgot to mention, if I may. Many of our schools only use 1 or 2 bathrooms because the vaping situation is so bad. You had indicated, if you had to make an assumption, if you may, how many tobacco-related to drug-related vapings are we catching? Is there a percentage you could just ballpark? Is it 75 to 25? Where would you file that's at?
I probably would say somewhere in that 75 to 25. We probably approximately have, let's say, 100 plus like DRUs, and then you're probably looking at your tobacco TBCs.
About 75 of them.
Yeah, you have a substantial amount more.
And the reason that I'm bringing this is that I have had 3 students in student discussions, one at Kennedy Space Center and 2 others, that have said that the vaping is so disgusting and it's bad. So if I'm a student that goes and vapes, I can come in, smoke my vape, get caught. I'm back 2 days later, I can smoke my vape, get caught, come back, and that is what's destroying our schools. So all I'm trying to do is move this up as an opportunity to show that this is a strong problem, and I think that it's something that I think we should do. That's all.
I want to, one more thing. So, the weapons detection devices that we just installed, and I'm sure I'm going to get some slack for this, but my understanding is they have the capability to turn the sensitivity down to be able to detect those vape pens, which probably would be worth doing. And maybe the logistics of that, and I'm sure I'm looking right at Mr. Wilson back there, so I'm sorry for this one. He's going, but it's probably worth doing just to see what happens and see if it ends up picking up a whole bunch of them, because what we're hearing from a lot of our school sites is that when it comes to vaping, the vapes, they're finding creative ways, like they'll stick it in their empty Stanley and then, that doesn't go through the detector, so they move it around and don't get caught that way. So maybe turning the sensitivity down and seeing what that looks like. Does that stop it? Do we see it's obviously you're gonna see a huge uptick at first, but then does it drop off afterwards? I guess where I'm at is like, hey, suspending a kid for 1 to 3 days out of school for the first time that they are caught with a vape pen, I don't think that that's the right solution. But I do think that something has to be done. Vaping is obviously an epidemic when it comes to these kids. I'm not sure how they're even getting it. Don't you have to be like 18 or, what is,
21.
18 in order to have it.
okay, that's
Mr.
what I'm
Chair?
like.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. Somebody else weigh in on this one.
Yeah, I will too.
So I think there's several reasons why I support the concept of making it more, making the punishment greater. One is just the student health. And I also know just from my own experience, when I was in school before vapes and it was smoking, it was absolutely disgusting. So from somebody who doesn't smoke or vape, and for these being minors, I think we're almost condoning it if we don't make it a harsh penalty. And I know as a parent, I wouldn't want if my child was caught doing it, number one, I'd want to know about it, and I'd want them to have consequences. So drug use is a level 4. I would not be opposed to having the first offense be a level 3, just for conversation.
And if I may, just for a fact, I'm sorry, Mr. Trent,
That's fine.
that second offense is a 1 to 3. So they can still suspend them for 1 day. It's more about the repeat that I'm trying to get to. That's all. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
All right. Ms. Campbell, let me, okay. So, we know we need to get vapes out of schools. It's just that simple. I personally, not that I don't care what's in them, I don't want the vapes in schools, and we understand that. Currently, do the SROs, do we give citations for the tobacco? I mean, is that a fine?
I believe that's by municipality. I'm not sure if that's
It is.
across.
It is, right?
Certain ones we've met, and Dr. Jenkins and I have met with certain municipalities, and we've had this inconsistency because some say they want to work with that, and some say they don't. So we wanted to be consistent.
Yeah, I wondered
So-
how we were handling that across the board, because it is citation worthy if they're underage and they have
Some
tobacco.
will not give the citation. I mean, we met last year because that was, at other places they do
Sure.
give them, but not here.
I mean, that's a deterrence. That was one thing I had written down. I had written down the open gate, that's right, and that they could crank down the sensitivity to have that. I'm all for upping the deterrent of vapes. If it's, multiple day suspension, whatever. We need to get, I have 2 kids in school now, and it's a known fact if you talk to students that we don't go to the bathroom during passing periods because it's just full of kids vaping. I mean, of course, kids say that, and or we don't go into that bathroom, and this is the vape bathroom, and it is an issue. So whatever we can do to make it a deterrent, but if it's 1 day out or 1 day out and then it's 1 day out again, if it's not increasing, anything we can do. I don't think this one is an overreaction by us, but maybe it could have been before today, and I apologize for that. But that's something that I would prefer us do, is to make it a major. We tackled it with the cell phones. Now the issue is we basically made them banned in our classrooms, but it's enforcement. So here's another thing that I think we can do is up the deterrent, and then rely then on the enforcement of that as well, because I know staffing is an issue at these schools. It would be great to have somebody, the adult, outside of every bathroom, but it's almost impossible to have that. But if we can give them that tool of, you're just not going to be in our schools if you're bringing vapes into our schools. So upping that, I'm all for that. However
Okay.
you want to make that clear.
And then I would say, Ms. Campbell, or Ms. Wright, do you want to have a conversation right now about the detection systems being turned up? Maybe on
Look at that.
maybe you do it on maybe you send out an idea.
That's outside the scope of the student code of conduct, but I mean, they can do things like just do spot checks. That way it's not a burden on schools, and just randomly do it, and the district send extra support personnel down there to help them do it on those days, but.
Last thing I'm going to bring up, and this was something I wasn't even planning on bringing up, but since we brought up open gate and all this, and where the kids are putting the vapes, was I had a dean at a school said that it would be to explore the wand, on searches for the
Ooh.
vapes, because of where they're putting that. They're able to pick up the vapes in all sorts of places, but I didn't know how we thought about that as a district. So when I mentioned that, I was told we had varying
I feel like there
opinions
was
on the
something
wand.
with Major Klein, and I would like them to weigh in on that. I
But
don't
I saw
know.
it, someone saw it in use and it
We
worked
have
out
it-
perfect.
We have it at Gardendale.
You use the wand at Gardendale?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it sounds like there's a majority of the board would like to see some kind of a pilot somewhere to just test it to see if we can catch some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to start it, is start with one school. Let's see what happens when we turn that sensitivity down. Do we pick up a ton more vapes? And then if that's effective of a way to stop them, then,
I guess I would defer that to Mr. Wilson about the
Okay.
wands. in schools and piloting that.
And the open gate. Well,
Okay.
Yeah. But for this, we're saying that level 2 would be level 1, and level 3 would be level 2, and then we would add 10 days for level 3.
Or whatever is appropriate
Yeah.
there to
Yep.
make it 3. And then I think he had mentioned to move it from 2 to 3 or something like that. Mr. Thomas, is that what you said, level 3? That would give them that ability to do those. Thank you for that, Mr. Thomas. I missed
Can I
that.
review that?
yeah.
First offense results in what?
1 to 3 days,
Second offense is 4 to 5,
4 to 5, and
and then
then
third offense
would
is,
be 10 days.
Okay.
You okay?
I'm not okay with that, but that's what they want.
Dr. Rendell, why? What's the pushback on that?
I'm okay with going first offense 1 day out, second offense being 3 days out, third offense being 5 days out.
Well, why would we do that? What's the difference between that and doing what we're doing?
What you just said was the first offense was 1 to 3 days. So you're going to get 3 days for your very first offense.
Okay.
And the second offense was going to be, how many?
4 to 5.
4 to 5.
4 to 5. And then the third offense, it's 10 days.
Well, what it?
It's a lot of missed instruction.
I do get what you're saying, though, taking out the.
But we got it. We got
taking out 1
direction.
to
We're good.
3, though, I mean.
We're good.
Yeah, I do,
All right.
we got it.
Next one, if we move to page 39, attendance. So if you look down here in section 5 where it says 5 unexcused absences, it says refer the case to the school's child study team to determine, and then it says if the child study team finds a pattern, and it says all of those things. My question is that we contact the parent at 3 unexcused absences. And then at 5 unexcused absences, we do that, but not until they're at 15 do we tell them that we may send a letter home explaining that they're going to file a complaint with the civil court, juvenile division, and all that other stuff. My question, if the board would allow it, is that on the level where it says the kid has 5 unexcused absences, that we send a notice to them saying that we may, at 15 days, file a complaint with the juvenile division. It just gives us the ability, a warning ahead of time that scares them a little bit more. I do know that shakes some parents into getting them moving, and it might be an opportunity for us to do so, that's all. If the board's okay with that.
I would support that. I think
it's
the
just a
warning
little
that this is
notice.
what the next step is very important. I had a question for Paul on this one, though, as far as reporting to the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles and that law. Is there something that pertains to the age of the student, like that's only applicable for, I mean, obviously only certain students can drive, but I thought there was something in there that said once they reach a certain age that didn't apply, but I'm not positive, so.
I believe it's, I'm pretty sure they get a reported list, but yeah, they wouldn't do anything until they're at like 14 or 15 when they can get their driver's license. They go on that list. Since we're on attendance, I will say I have a slight issue with the language change in the policy
Okay.
because you're excusing absences for personal illness potentially based on the language for the year, all right? So unless they are out for 5 consecutive days, no doctor notes needed.
Right.
If there's 36 weeks in a school year, I can come to school 1 day every week and have been in school for 36 days out of the 180 and have no unexcused absences under the way the policy is written, under the proposed changes, because there's no cap on how many notes or absences a parent can excuse. Under that, you will never have an unexcused absence because every parent can just say, my kid was out, and it's now an excused absence. So you might want to consider adding a cap to how many absences a student can be out on. Because like I said, we have kids in truancy, parents will send a note saying my kid is out, and they can probably get their kid there 1 day a week. So if there's 36 weeks in a school year, you're going to have kids attending 36 days, taking your tests, setting your school grades and your district grades with no education instruction time.
can you make a recommendation to staff to bring it back? Because
My understanding at one point was they could excuse like up to 9 days. That might be something we want to look at.
It was 10.
10 days, so I
that
mean,
was their
you can
failure to
excuse
ask.
up to 10 personal illnesses.
Without a medical.
Yeah, without a doctor's note. Beyond that, you need doctor's notes. I mean, at some point, that is going to be a chronic illness. We have a process for declaring a chronic illness that requires you to be out. You get your doctor to certify. Then at that point, it goes in their file. The kid calls the school. Hey, my kid's whatever's acting up, so they're not going to be in school. That's the proper process for the chronic illness. If they're missing that much school, they probably have a chronic illness, and that would be the proper procedure, not a I'm excusing all these absences. But yeah, so you're going to completely have 0 unexcused absences. If you have an unlimited, I can excuse all these absences.
Mr. Gibbs, just since you're going to truancy all the time, you deal with a lot of this stuff, can you make some recommendations we could take a look at?
Yeah, I can. The policy is going to come up on April 8th for discussion, so we can talk about it more in depth on changes then. I'll try and bring some proposed language
That
for
would
the
be
April 8th
beautiful.
work session.
That would be beautiful. Okay, that's all, that one section I had. Let me go make sure that I have a bunch of notes throughout my thing here, depending on the thing. Hang on just a second. Okay. Yep.
More notes.
No, that one is already done. Banging cell phones in the school. All right. That's it. Let me just make sure I have everything taken care of. Yes. I rest. Okay.
Really?
Now, that's it. I'm sorry. Thank you for all of that.
Okay. Page 1. No. No. Sorry. Lots of good input, and thank you so much for everybody so passionately doing this. Let's see if we can recall. Ms. Campbell brought up some really good things about keeping a couple of those in 4, which Mr. Thomas mentioned, improving consistency. I think that's our goal, is to improve consistency. And I do believe level 5's, the consistency is, this is exactly, we know what the result's going to happen. And there's a couple of those there that I think could be at the school level decision-making, and it could possibly, I look at the 4 ramifications there is kind of 4/5, because it could jump into the same result as a level 5. So I'm okay with keeping those in a level 4. I don't know where we're at on those. We did on the staff member, major, minor, so you guys have that, but I just wanted to put that out there. What John had talked about, some of the things that were wanted to move up a little bit. The forgery, I understand the forgery as an adult, because you're potentially taking somebody's house, and possessions. I just think of it as the Epstein clause in schools. The welcome back Cotter thing. That's about the forgery that we're looking at schools. So it's probably not as big of an issue as an adult. In the law enforcement out there. I mean, that's a major issue, and I agree with the whole thing of stealing.
I was thinking more along the
identities.
lines of, and I don't know if there's even an opportunity for it, but for a student forging the teacher's signature on a document, or that they bring over to the parents, or vice
Parent
versa.
signature.
Yeah,
Something
permission
like that.
slips. It's going to be most of those things. That we're going to get. So I don't know, how much of a head we want to cut off for that. Those things there, but. Lots of good discussions, guys. You had so much time and effort that you put into this, and I appreciate the one-on-one meetings where we were able to, put a lot of this out there. It's unfortunate that Matt wasn't able to attend the one-on-one. So,
But even if I did, I still would have brought them all.
and we need those out here for us to discuss those. So not yet. I just make light of that. So it's great. This is why this board works so well together, of bringing things up. And us being able to discuss it like this. So I think you have direction on anything. Is anything else anybody wanted to add?
We want to clarify, because we want to get to work. They're ready to get to work, but we want to make sure we have no
Sure you
other
will.
questions. So can we review shortly
Yeah.
the recommendations to make sure we are clear?
We would
There was a
expect
lot of discussion.
Right.
Just a bit.
Just because a lot of stuff wasn't actually on this, so bear with me as I kind of comb through this. So I'm going to go through these first, and then I'll go through the other ones here. So I'm just going to go to ones that I saw. So looking at item 2, I believe there was consensus that removing the language of school board employee from the physical aggression code and making sure it's clear that, physical aggression on a staff member shall be considered, a level 4 or 5, depending on the severity of it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
We're working, all right.
So just to clarify, so basically to incorporate the policy that we already have? Or are you talking about, except for that would be battery?
Yeah, I think
our
it was
policy
just-
that we have is battery.
Yeah, so the language in here, Ms. Campbell, had been existing for several years, and I think now it's just maybe closing up that part there to make sure that there's really consistency. If there's any physical contact, aggressive contact made on a staff member, that it's being coded properly.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right. False accusation against staff member, if I can try to understand that one was, we were looking at making a potentially major and minor version of that. So we would come back to you all with some definition suggested language.
Yes.
I'm not, ones that I know that I didn't have questions, I might not
Yeah.
go through, so I'm just combing through, apologies. I believe there was consensus on the threat to school staff student, the local code of 118 being removed and just keeping with a TRE. I believe, Mr. Thomas, you had mentioned that on the levels, removing the flexibility of the 1 to 3, 4 to 5 day flexibility on the guidelines.
I did. I don't know if the board's consensus was,
So right now on a lot
Which
of
number
them.
are you on?
The guideline what?
Number 6, is that 6?
Is it 16 or is it?
Yeah, so we're looking at artifact number 1. So if I'm looking at, like, let's say, additional level 3 guidelines, inciting gives schools the opportunity to use between 1 and 3 days for the first offense of inciting. Second offense is 1 to 5 days. Third offense is 3 to 5. So depending on them, there is some flexibility, and that was there to provide school administrators with some autonomy to decide based on the specific scenario how they wanted to code that.
But we're asking for specific numbers for,
and that's a double-edged sword, but I was between giving the principals some discretion and being inconsistent with how things go. And so I think it's being more defined. I was suggesting that for the level 3 that we had do a 3-day out and remove the flexibility 1 to 3 days and just do it 3 days, and level 4 do 5 days instead of 1 to 5 days out.
Where are you looking?
Those are
Sorry.
just the
I'm-
general penalties for the levels.
For the artifact one with the first offense, second offense, third offense? Or you're talking
Oh,
about
it's
all
over
the
here.
levels?
Yes.
Okay.
Like over here.
No, he's talking about on this, the corrective strategies.
Okay.
No, I think that a lot of thoughtful work has been done through the years for each level of giving a menu choice. Depending on, because
Right
it's
here.
such a
Keep going.
variety
There.
of, certainly staff could go back and we could have them go through every single one of these behaviors and assign, but I think I don't know that is,
I look at level 4, and you have the flexibility of 1 to 5 days. To me, it should be at least, if, say, for instance, level 3 is 1 to 3 days, level 4 should be 4 to 5 days. Instead, it shouldn't be,
They shouldn't overlap.
you're right, exactly.
I'm gonna look at physical aggression. I mean, the first offense, it's parent contact 1 day in-school suspension, stay away contract, and then, then we now have parent conference and 1 to 3 days in-school suspension. So it's almost the same punishment for level 1 and 2. Or first offense, sorry, and second offense.
Same as verbal.
It's, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Thomas. I think honestly, it needs to be clearly defined and not a variation of days.
I like it too.
I think why it's there is that first offense may not result in a suspension at all, right? So then the second offense now, in addition to other things, it could be a suspension.
I'm just going to point you guys out because I'm sitting next to him. What Mr. Thomas is looking at is the level
He's not
1,
looking at
2.
this? Oh.
He's looking at these pages right here and saying, there should be fewer options, correct?
Mr. Thomas, can you
Okay.
show us where?
What page are you on, Mr. Thomas?
We're looking at,
16, 15, 16,
Yeah, I know.
17, and 18, and 19, the level 1 through level 5.
Okay, that's where it was.
I'm opposed to
Okay,
that.
hang
I
on,
think,
15,
because
page
we have such a
15.
variety. We could have 25 levels.
What?
And because we have such a variety of,
Page 15, 16, 17.
and some of it, like, so on a level 3, it's in-school suspension. Level 2 also has in-school suspension. Some schools don't have the ability to really do in-school suspension well, so that's not something that they utilize very often, especially elementary schools. Because sometimes it turns into a play day, so like, we're not going to hardly do any in-school suspensions because we don't have an in-school suspension room, and where they end up having to do it, it's not a good place. And so and some of it's because you're bumping up from one to the next. I think those are good as they are. Like I said, a lot of thoughtful work has been done through the years to give this. And I hear you about trying to make it fair and consistent. Those are things we have to work on.
Fair, consistent, and the
Well-
one thing doesn't, and maybe there, maybe there's logic behind it, but having it overlap the way that it does, the 1 to 3 days and then 1 to 5 days.
Well, I think what Ms. Campbell brought up makes a lot of sense, because there are schools out there that don't have that in-school suspension set up. So first offense was the in-school suspension, and it didn't work. Second offense, now we are going to go to the suspension. There are schools that don't have that, so they're going to suspend one day the first time, the second day. So they're suspension, whereas you kind of need that beginning suspension on some instances where they don't have the ability to send them into an in-school suspension, so to speak. So that's
once
kind of
again,
why.
that's, you have, for, say, a level 3, somebody has, and maybe it's fine the way it is with the principal having that discretion, but they can give your son an in-school suspension, and they can give my son a 3-day out.
Correct.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
the
And
problem.
that's-
Yes.
And that could be a problem.
To me, that's.
So that's enforcement.
Inconsistency, because that's too much discretion. That's, I can see having some flexibility, based on the circumstances, but I was just, my intention was to bring it up to make it, just tighten it up a little bit to make it more consistent.
I agree.
Do we do audits of that kind of
Yes.
thing? We do. At the school level.
We do, so we have existing reports that you can run, that's a mismatch. The issue we a lot of times we see of that report, Ms. Campbell, is that we have multiple corrective actions that live in different levels. So sometimes the report, even though it's constantly vetted, sometimes can throw an error and say, well, there's a mismatch. Well, technically, suspension lives in level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5.
Right.
So it might throw a mismatch, and it's a constant, caretaking of this report. I mean, it is a useful tool because it does catch a lot, but there are still sometimes, because we have so many corrective actions that overlap on multiple levels, it sometimes is, it's very difficult to follow.
And I also agree that because every school does not have the same thing. You can't just say 3 days if I don't have in-school suspension, because I can't afford, I don't have the funding for it. But then another school, they do have the funding for it. So if we say 3 days, but then another school, out-of-school suspension, but then another school has in-school suspension, I think until we be consistent, you do need that range until we can fund and.
So can you clarify why the penalty would be from in-school suspension all the way up to 3 days out?
It may be 1 day, I'm just, that's why the
I'm just saying that
range.
there's a huge disparity between that, that if the principal doesn't like my son for whatever reason, that could be, my son could be penalized the 3 days, and somebody else, your son could only get an in-school suspension.
I find a disparity is that you're getting in-school suspension, and I'm not allowed because I don't have the funding for it. So that's where the discrepancy, so that's why there's so much flexibility. If we were to supply everybody secondary with, I'm just saying, in-school suspension personnel, then you can say, for the first offense, this is what's gonna happen. For the second offense, but because you have that variance of some schools do have it and some schools don't, like you said, there's a software, they're doing a progression. You get 1 day of out-of-school suspension, and it just depends.
Or remove in-school suspension altogether.
yeah, because then you can either, and you give them the option on the first one. So I support you, John. Yeah, I support Mr. Thomas with this one.
So are we just making just the days instead of the range? Are we agreeing to just say 1 day? 3 days?
No, he's talking about an overhaul of this plan. Just to be honest, you are talking about an overhaul that basically says for every, I mean, this is what it potentially could look like. To really get down to what you're doing is every behavior having this chart. And if this is behavior, this is what you're going to do. And this is behavior, this is what you're going to do. That's an overhaul of this process.
Or the ranges not being so drastic.
Disparate.
And I'd like to hear Dr. Rendell's opinion too, because obviously I know he's, based on his experience.
I actually like the tables the way they're set up right now. I think if you want to do some things to say, like, for example, if you're looking at level 3, you can go anywhere from a detention to an out-of-school suspension up to 5 days. That seems like a wide range. Like, whoa, you could do this, and one student could get a detention and the other could get out-of-school suspension for 5 days. I've never really seen that happen. You have the range because not every situation is the same, but you're going to deal with each situation the same. So if 2 kids were caught leaving school without permission, level 3, you're not going to give one a detention and one a suspension. You're going to give them the same. But you have this range because these behaviors is a wide range of these behaviors. And there's a wide range of severity within the behavior. So that's why you're given the building level leadership the flexibility to choose the consequence that they think is most appropriate. There's ranges.
Do you run into, based on your experience, the difference between principals? So one principal will do a detention and the other one, I'm being drastic, but will do the 5 days out, and there's that kind of.
Never seen it arranged quite like that.
Well,
I mean,
he's
obviously,
had-
yeah, every human being is an individual, so there are going to be differences. I think Mrs. Campbell's right. If you want to kind of tighten these up a little bit, well, not a little bit, tighten these up a lot or make this look a lot different, you're going to have to change the whole chart. You're going to have to say, for bullying, you're getting this. For counterfeit, you're getting this. For electronic transmission, electronic telecommunication device, minor, you're getting this. Major. So that's, we can't do that between now and the end of this year. So I would say, if the board direction is to go to more of a specific matrix, you skip, you get this. And that way, you should get more consistency that way. Then we can work on next year's code of conduct to look like that. But this is, everybody's been trained on this. This is what we've got. Where the committee did all of its work. I wouldn't want to make those changes now. I'm not against that. I think, again, if we're trying to get more consistent, the less options we give, the better. But I think we're too late in the game for this year for
Just
that.
real follow-up question on the most effective school districts that you are aware of, most successful ones, the highest performing ones. Do they have any commonality among their discipline?
I wouldn't be able to say which one were more higher performing than others, but I will tell you this type of chart is more common. Having ranges is more common. So,
Well, I appreciate that.
but I mean, I think it might be, again, we might be too far in the process to change this for this coming year. The other thing is, we need to probably do a little research during this year if we want to see what is the variance. Is there really a variance? Like if everybody that does skips leaves campus without permission, are they all getting the same thing? If they're all getting the same thing, then we don't need to change this. If they're not all getting the same thing, then yeah, we probably need to change this.
My intention certainly wasn't to rewrite the whole policy or upset the apple cart, and I appreciate all the work that the stakeholders put into it, and the staff, and you, Pam, and you and your team. So certainly that was not my intention. Just my only intention out of those comments were to try to tighten it up where there wasn't quite as big a disparity. Flexibility, having discretion is fine, but it's maybe, so having a set number may not be the answer. I don't disagree with that.
Well, I think, again, when you look at the chart, you can say a level 3 offense can get anything from an extended detention to 5 days out.
That seems to me like very direct.
Seems like a pretty wide range.
That's
Too-
huge.
too-
I would, well, I want to say bet, heavily, but I haven't seen that much of a wide range for the same offense. Like, typically, if you do this, you're going to get this. You do this, you're going to get
Well, if
this.
that, and that's what we typically have, why don't we just have that as our, what the penalty
Yeah,
is?
I'm not opposed to it, just probably too late to change this one.
The team, the discipline work group, they've had conversation, and I've had with individual board members that this was just the initial, like putting it in chart format, just to see, this year, but the goal would be, if it's the willingness of the board, for us to do a sample out, of having each progression, each one of those be progressed on from level 1 to level 3 for each item, but it is a big undertaking. It's not something that can happen, but they already know that there's a possibility that we would be moving to that if that's the willing of the board.
And John, if I can add, this is something that just add to your list of when you're out there visiting schools and talking to deans and principals is what are their thoughts? Has this held them back? Would they welcome a more defined options? I mean, I've been out there where there's some communities that are very thankful that they have the options, where they don't want to send a kid home for 3 days. They'd rather have them in a in-school suspension. And so I don't want to get into, at least they're getting lunches and breakfasts and stuff to keep them there. But, in other instances, no, they can be gone for 2 days. It's a whole, we're 72 miles up and down, left and right. Each individual community will handle things a little differently. So I think we welcome that flexibility in some of these areas. But that is something that we should probably, throughout this year, ask community members, ask deans, ask teachers, ask parents, that type of thing. So I appreciate it.
And I'm not trying to create a
Yeah.
lot of extra work, and I'm the new guy, so I'll use that excuse for the next year or so.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would just say, if I would be very interested in just knowing what some of the other districts that are high performing
Yeah, very good.
do, and they're similar, like Seminole and some other ones that are similar to us.
And we've already pulled that information back in November and looking at some of what they're doing with charts. And some are using the same charts, but then some are actually have charted out their whole discipline consequences with, you must do this. So we've seen it very structured, and we've seen some that are similar to this. So we've had conversations, we've already had this conversation, and we were going to bring something, but it's just time consuming to make sure that we bring a good product. So if that's still, we'll do some more research, and if you want us to pursue doing the chart, we will pursue that.
And just, I think, I've altered my opinion a little bit. I just think we should tighten it up a little bit,
Okay.
the ranges, my personal opinion,
Okay.
just not quite so broad.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about the monopoly of time there.
No.
The direction of the board on that. So when we're looking at the levels, we would kind of remove some of the flexibility of the 1 to 3 day option and tighten it.
Barring my stuff that we already got board approval with, he's kind of doing this broad stroke, so mine still stays, but whatever he says he wants to do, he's going in a direction.
I'm good with keep where we are right now, just I think that we should do some further investigation, some research for how, if we should tighten up those ranges so they're not overlapping as much and they are a little more, can provide a little more consistency.
John, I support your move on that, just for the record. I really think we do need a lot of work on this, because I think the menu option does create discrepancies and disparities in how we're disciplining. So I also recognize that this is a huge undertaking, so this will be something we'll have to work on. Sorry, Dr. Rendell?
Well, no, just to make sure the board's aware, we're going to track the data a little differently this year as well, to try to make sure we can track, if this offense was committed, what is the consequence? Like, clean, so we can make sure that we can then say, did everybody who committed bullying get the same thing? Did everybody who committed leaving school campus without permission get the same thing? So right now, we actually didn't have a way to track that cleanly.
Okay.
At the very least, it might give us a closer range of.
Correct, and then we
schools.
might say, yeah, we really need to fix this because we're all over the place. Yeah.
Good.
I think your microphone turned off.
Okay, so with this, we were just looking at keeping it right now the same, doing research.
Correct.
Correct.
To make sure that next year, maybe some potential tightening up of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and some options. Thank you.
Okay,
Pretty sure that's what I said.
Yes.
all right. Moving on. And I'll go through some more of these two. On the level 4 to level 5 changes in the code of conduct, I know we had feedback on the, I think it was the false accusation one. Did we have any stance on the sexual harassment, maintaining at a level 4 or moving it to a level 5?
I support 5.
Putting it back at a 4.
I actually thought when we discussed that, we ended up with leaving it at a 4. I thought there was,
I thought so.
Mr. Thomas, what was your call?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
good with leaving it for.
Yeah, same.
That stays at a 4.
Okay. The rest of these are going to be based on the notes that I've taken from conversation. So, Mr. Susan, you added that on page 6. You would like there to be language that under parent responsibilities, that they review the code of student conduct with their child?
Something.
Something
give
in
us
that.
the teeth that, hey, we put it in there for you to do. You know what I mean? However you want to word that, but yes, that sounds
yeah,
good.
we got it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you got that.
Mhm.
The level 2 ones, Mr. Thomas, you had mentioned about the ammunition's possession, the forgery, and the possession of stolen property, particularly maybe making a set dollar amount to that, maybe moving them all to level 3. Was that something we wanted to move forward with?
And I agree with Mr. Trent about the forgery, so I would remove that one, but I would stick with if the board were so inclined, especially the possession of stolen property, give it a value and maybe raise the level up if it's over $100.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
I support that.
Paul, is that anything that we, okay?
The ammunition's possession, just, what were we talking about, level 2?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about, a kid who found, and I'm not, just situations that happen.
Exactly.
Kid finds a bullet on the side of the road, carries it in their pocket, that kind of thing. Possession of a fixed metallic or non-metallic hull or casing containing a primer, one or more projectiles, one or more bullets or shot, and/or gunpowder. I think if there's suspicion that there's something else going on, like you talked about, if somebody has ammunition, somebody has a gun, then I think that's a further investigation that those administrators do. They don't just leave it at, oh, somebody found bullets. So, a lot of times, we've had schools shut down because they found a bullet in a hallway. Am I correct, Mr. Wilson? Yes, because I've gotten the RAVAP notifications, like they call the shelter in place till they can figure out what else may be going on because someone found a bullet. So I don't think that they take it lightly. But in this case, this would be, I think the level 2 instance is the situation where, like I said, kid picks, has it in their pocket. It's still discipline needs to be dealt with, but,
That's one incident. There's also more of a chance that they have an intention why they brought it to school.
Yeah,
Right, and that's part of the
I believe when Mr. Thomas brought this up earlier, he was talking about leaving it at a level 2 for elementary and making it a level 3 for secondary.
Correct.
okay. I could still
Thank
with
you.
that.
I can support that.
Okay, so moving potentially ammunition possession from a level 2 to a level 3 just for secondary, but keeping it as a level 2 for elementary. And then
Correct.
developing language for a set dollar amount for possession of a stolen property.
And I would clarify that for secondary as well, I think that.
Okay? Mr. Susan, you had asked for the cell phone policy offenses based on artifact 1 to collapse the third offense to then become the level 2 offense, and then replace the third offense with 3 days of OSS, I believe was the consensus.
I'm opposed to that.
You already said that. Okay, let's go to.
Sounds like it sounds like you already got the consensus.
You
there.
said,
Yeah.
I think we collapsed 3 to 2, 2 to 1.
Yes.
And then adding out of school 3 specific.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep. You got it. That's it. That's it. You got it.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
For the tobacco, we were looking to change that range as well. So for the first offense being a 1 to 3 day OSS, second offense being a 4 to 5, and the third day being the 10-day OSS, and moving tobacco in itself from a level 2 to a level 3 offense.
Yep. That's it.
Regarding the flipper device, the conversation and consensus, I believe, was the request of a new level 4, a new code being requested, and adding to artifact number 3, which outlines the wireless communication devices. For secondary, I believe the consensus was to add that as a level 5 offense, and for elementary, to add that as a level 4 offense.
And then on the tail end, to be able to confiscate and search it, check with Paul Gibbs to make sure that we can do that.
By the way, you did an excellent job keeping up with all this.
Yeah. You should see Paul
I think there's 4 or 5 of us writing notes, so we're all gonna, yeah, we have people in the back too as well.
And there's
so.
a whole committee watching on TV that are cussing at us right now.
And I believe there was some request as well to find the number of times we used failure to report criminal offenses this school year. I had someone do some research, thankfully for that, and we've had 2 this year so far. The number of tobacco offenses this school year, I do not have a number for, but I can come back with a number of tobacco
No
offenses
rush,
this year.
no rush, just something to look at, that's all.
Was there anything that we missed that I might not have captured?
All that other stuff that I
We'll
had.
need to talk about the tenancy policy with what Mr. Gibbs
Yes.
mentioned.
If I need to, I can come to you with all the rest of the stuff that we went through.
Okay.
I don't want to go through that right now because Gene will probably try to punch me.
Oh, and Ms. Wright, you had a thing about the stay-away contract.
Correct,
Yes.
I had that in my notes.
Parent and guardian contact must be made, phone call, instead of just an email. You want that to be an actual conversation.
Yes.
And we will add that to the code of conduct list as well.
Okay.
The only other one I have is new code for failure to report serious offense, right? We were going to leave the criminal one the way it is,
Yeah.
because that's criminal. But consider a new code for failure to report serious offenses.
Did we?
Yep, we
Nailed
did
it.
that. And then I can go through them all if you guys want, or I can come over there and show you guys. One or the other. There's a couple more little things, but I don't want to go through it because I'm going to get punched.
Well, I mean, this is their
Physical
chance to
ability.
get consensus from the board. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
go around
We
and
already
have
went
your
through,
side
got
conversation with
consistent.
her.
We had consensus from the board. We went through it. I can go through it all again. I'll just go
Is
through
there
it.
anything you missed?
Is there anything else? Because what the next step
Yeah.
would be.
So we did the tobacco, right? I'll go back to it. I mean, there's a video on it. It's not a big deal.
So what we'll do next is we'll send this back out to the board members, and we'll list all the proposed changes and the artifacts. If it's on an artifact, if it's on a page number, we'll send that to you, and if there are any discrepancies, you can just email me back, and then we'll correct that, because we wanted to have this on the April 8th board agenda, so I
The,
can have it before school.
The notification of the absences, but Paul Gibbs is going to pull that as
Yes,
part of
we're
his
gonna look at that policy, and we're
recommendation.
gonna bring that back April
We-
8th.
We can pull the video, but I'll go through this so we can get moving, because we'll be here all day if you let me go back into my notes.
No, what Mrs. Campbell is saying, as long as there's nothing, that-
New.
it's not anything new. If it's stuff
Right.
we've already covered, yeah, it's all
Yeah, yeah,
it's all
yeah,
good.
that's it, that's it, yep, that's it.
I know it's really late, but we gotta can we take a 5-minute?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we're done, right?
Yes.
We're all good, and if we could, we could take a 5-minute recess before we could continue. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you.
It's 3:33.
Oh my goodness, all right, I gotta go rush. Let me get out of the weeds of that.